Yeah, I already wrote back. That was easy. Are we good, Bill? Oh, okay. Oh, it's recording. I got it. Oh, sorry. Got it. Come on in. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Um, do you want to just start at communications and do warrants later, or do you want to do, let's just approve the minutes and, okay. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mm. I just want to go. I just want to go. Yeah. Don't know. Don't know one bit.
So I can mention next time over the next one.
So the deal is.
Yeah.
I think I'm sending audio, I just can't hear the Zoom, so I'll
Okay.
keep working on it, but you can go on.
All right. Yes, sir. That's what we'll do. All right. Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, sorry. I was just ready to go, Bill. I'm sorry. You gotta be clear. I'm itching. I gotta ready to roll here. Mm.
When you see yourself.
I was, oh God, I always run away when I see myself. Okay. That sounds like a deal. Oh, I do see myself. All right, here it goes. It's 5:43. Let's stand and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 8th Select Board meeting. This meeting did, in fact, is scheduled to start at 5:30. We got a little bit of a late start due to some technical issues, but we want to make sure that we honor what is a full 2-hour agenda. We're going to begin tonight. We're going to do our minutes and warrants later. We want to start with our communications, which is 15 minutes, so that'll take us right into our public hearing. The select board communications are first. Are there any members here of the select board that would like to communicate? Sean.
I just wanted to thank everybody that assisted with the field cleanup day at the Church Road Fairgrounds. Ball fields, opening day for the youth sports was on Saturday. I can't believe how dry it looked and how clean it looked after all that rain. There was a little bit on right field. It was still a little wet, but it looked great. And it was a lot of fun had by with 3 home games on Saturday. It went really well. So thanks to all those volunteers that helped to make it look good.
Awesome. Great job. Anyone else? Steve?
I know one quick thing, just this past Tuesday, Hannah and I, was met with the policy committee for the second time, school board. And made a kind of agreement now with them, bathroom down at the track, will be open for like soccer and things like that. So
Awesome.
That's a really good thing. That's, we're working and trying to improve the cooperation between the town and the school. That was a really good step. And the schools will talk to that. And they also open the school gyms all to groups of less than 20. So now on that custodians in charge, and I'll sign those out and get a key card.
Awesome.
So those are 2 really good things. Really encouraging, and we have more work. That's really
Awesome. What a great job and partnership with the community and the school. Catherine?
Nope.
All right.
I had another one.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to thank the library for putting on the Star Wars event and our resident Dave for the wonderful addition to that. It was there was a lot. I was amazed at how many families came through the door that night, and I think people thought it was a great event. So thank you, library folks.
Sorry, I'm just updating Steve. According to one of our Zoom folks, you want to talk right into the microphone, Steve. So good information that you had. We'll just do it louder. Thank you. The last thing I will say about communications is that our next Heritage Days planning committee meeting is on Sunday, May 21st at 1 p.m. at in this very room. We are starting to pencil in our schedule for Heritage Days. Heritage Days happens the second weekend of August. So if you are keeping score at home, I can tell you that that is the 11th and 12th of August this year, Friday and Saturday. And we have a number of different things. The wine and cheese is going to be for the Historical Society on Friday, and Saturday, all kinds of fun stuff. We know there's going to be a history walk. We know there's going to be a book sale, but we will officially figure all of that out at our next meeting. Again, that is May 21st, 1 p.m. right here in this room. Refreshments provided at that meeting. All right, very good. We move forward to staff communications. Eric has 5 minutes to tell us about his town manager report.
I'll just give a quick update, carrying on with the community events piece. We do have Cleanup May happening this month. And so anybody that would like to help with roadside cleanup can go to the town website or reach out to me or anyone at the transfer station, and we can work on getting you some equipment and giving folks assignments for roads. Some have already been taken, but we still have plenty of open spots. So I will ask folks that have an interest to please do that. If you would like to do it at your own pace. We also are having on May 13th, starting at 8 p.m. or excuse me, 8 a.m. We'll be meeting at the fairgrounds parking lot and departing from there to do roadside cleanup as a group, which is something we had done before COVID. Spreading it out was kind of during and post COVID, but a couple different opportunities there for the roadside cleanup. And then carrying on with the road piece, we did have quite a storm last week, and I want to thank the staff for their work, getting right into helping out with repairs and helping to organize. And I also want to thank John Cushing and Scott Horn for their tremendous work to get our roads patched up in short order. There's still work ongoing, but those guys were out there the next day helping to get our roads back in shape, and some other towns I think are still working on it. So we were fortunate, and I really appreciate the work that was done by our contractors and the town staff to get things back in order. We're going to have to do some follow-up work. There's no question about that. Plains Road could use some hardening, and we have to figure out what caused that original culvert at the top of the hill to blow out. There was a driveway that lost, a tremendous amount of material because a stream appears to have gone over the bank and through someone's driveway, causing just a catastrophic failure. So that's something we're going to have to look at, but that's what we've been up to lately, aside from preparing for town meeting and all of that business. So I'll have more detail and the full treasurer's report next meeting, but that's it for now.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. If there's nothing else, this is the portion of the meeting where we open up communications to the public. Want to throw it out to anyone on Zoom first. If you are here with us Zoom casting and you'd like to address the select board, now is your opportunity. Hearing none. If anyone here in person would like to address the select board, you may. We're going to do Ralph, and then we'll go to you. Yes, sir. Thank you. You know to go to the podium, say your name. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Ralphino, 52 Mountain View Lane, Reedfield, Maine. The sidewalk discussion has been in play for a number of years now. And I would just respectfully urge the board to, at its earliest convenience, to publicly define the right-of-way on Church Road so that the abutters know where their property lines are and what the town line is, because I think that is going to be crucial to determining whether or not this project moves forward. And the more advanced information that the abutters have as to what their property limits are and what the town road limits are, the more informed that vote will be. And right now, my sense is that that information is not there in a comprehensive fashion. And it should be very quickly, given the fact that I believe it's going to be in a warrant for this coming fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. You may go ahead. Thank you, Ralph.
I'm Eric Winter. I live on Main Street down in the depot. I heard that the senior citizen hours at the dump on Thursday are gone. Is that true, and why? So,
I can respond if you'd like.
Sure, yes.
I'll
Catherine is,
respond to that if you'd like, because it's a very clear-cut answer. First, I have to remind you, even though you and I still call it the dump, it's the transfer station.
understood.
yeah, she's on the
So that's our
committee, yeah.
little inside slang. It was brought to our attention that those hours should have been open to everyone. And so we checked with legal counsel, and legal counsel said that being a public governmental operation, we cannot have hours that are restricted to anybody. So we have to be open for everybody or for nobody. And since that's the day for commercial haulers, we decided that for the safety of and efficiency of the operation to go back to the previous schedule, which was Thursdays, was contractors only.
Thank you. That's a completely satisfactory answer. I would say that I was told that it happened because someone complained. And-
There was a complaint about us having special hours that were only for seniors, and they wanted it open for everyone.
Yeah.
And then once we talked with legal counsel and found out that indeed we were not supposed to be doing it for just any age group, but for all or none, we had to go back to none to meet the safety efficiency standards.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir. Anyone else, members of the public, maybe who just got here, who would like to address the select board as a part of this meeting? There you go. Just go ahead and say your name like we don't know you.
Virginia Parker, Church Road. So I'd like to piggyback on Ralph's request. Can you also paint and make those boundaries visible to those who don't live on Church Road? So when they make the vote to consider what side it goes on and whatnot, they can see how much and how close and how personal space the sidewalk is going to put onto some of the houses. And then to piggyback on, I don't remember this gentleman's name with the transfer station. Is there a way for the town to look into some kind of disability act to allow the seniors to have their special hour?
I don't think so, because being a senior citizen isn't a disability
Okay.
by definition, so.
I heard that. I heard some folks, yeah.
I
heard
did
some
not
folks,
hear
yeah. But yes.
we are looking at what we could possibly do to have expanded hours, but it becomes a much bigger,
Well, then it becomes more of a financial obligation as well.
and we are. gonna-
Whereas with the commercial, it didn't. And it just seems like you listened to the attorney, but you didn't look for any alternatives. And attorneys usually know loopholes if
we did-
requested, but if
Right.
not requested, they won't look for loopholes.
We weren't looking for loopholes as such, but to follow the law correctly. And we did look at many different alternatives. The solid waste committee is going to look at it on their next agenda. And we are continuing our regular summer hours now on Sundays. So there will be that time between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Oh, yeah, go for it. Absolutely. Yeah, you know the drill there. Thank you, Alan. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Alan Curtis. I'm Thunder Castle Road. When I was on the select board, it was a battle of why Sunday hours was open. Mostly because the answer seemed to be at the time, mostly because summer people did not want to take their lobster shells back home. They wanted a way to get rid of it. So with all of the humbug and all the fighting and all the conversations, the town decided to open the transfer station on Sunday. To me, if you can do that for the Sunday and pay somebody to be there, an additional fee, you ought to be able to open it up on Thursdays for the senior citizens, where you don't have to pay anybody extra. It's fair. It should be done. As a senior citizen who has one heck of a time walking, sitting there and not being able to park as close as I need to physically, handicap wise, it's not comfortable. And it's a risk to my health because I can't get close enough on Saturdays or Mondays or even Sundays to get to the place. There is no real chance or no real objective of the town to try to make that transfer station handicap friendly.
We can bring that up at our next meeting and see what can be done.
Yep, okay, we'll see.
Solid waste is what I meant.
Thank you.
Meeting.
Yeah. Anybody else in the public wish to go to the podium? Have your moment?
Do you want me to do the warrant so we don't start early?
Yes. What we'll do is, if everyone is wrapped up, we'll go back to our item, which is 23-114. It's the warrant. 43 and 44. Catherine has that, and she will explain to us. We just want to make sure we get as close to 6 o'clock for the public hearing as possible. Catherine, take it away.
Okay, so doing this on my phone. Warrants 43 and 44 were for $54,386.99. And that was $22,726.24 for payroll and $31,660.75 for accounts payable. Anything of note there, $4,874 was to Goral Palmer for sidewalk engineering work. $3,665 was to Pretty Flaherty. 3,000 of that was for a pending lawsuit against the town, and 600 was for regular town business. 2,783 was for repairs to fire truck equipment. And that is the end of that warrant. So the motion would be to approve $54,386.99.
I'll make a motion to approve warrants 43 and 44 for the amount of $54,386.99.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept warrants 43 and 44 for the amount of $54,386.99. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. While we have a moment, I'd also like to go back and make sure we can approve our minutes. Item 23-113, the minutes of April 24th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 24th, 2023. I made two corrections with the secretary today. One was to add the name of Church Road to which line? Town manager communications, second line on the brush grinding. And the other was to remove a fragmented sentence in 23-021.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the meeting of April 24th, pending the changes. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Thank you very much. Very well. We go to, we're not going to go to 23077, right? We're going to go right to the public hearing. Is that right?
Right.
Yes, because we want to make sure. So we are going to open up our public hearing as a part of this meeting, just so you know what that means. We will have the folks from Goral Palmer, the engineers here, and hear from them. Just so you know, this is about the extension of the sidewalk that goes from the Reed Field corner up to the fairgrounds entrance. Just so everybody knows what we're talking about. If you're at home and you're on your computer, you can check this out online at reedfieldmaine.org and follow along with some of the stuff there. Their packet is under the select board packet, or the select board information on the tab there in the homepage. Other than that, Eric, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Sure. So this, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, project has been going on for a number of years now. It started off at least 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago with grant applications to the Maine Department of Transportation Bicycle and Pedestrian Program. The project in that phase was approved by voters. We moved forward, applied multiple times, finally received funding a couple of years ago, and moved forward since that time through COVID to kind of get things moving, and finally started with actual design work this past fall and winter. The instruction really was to come up with two possible alignments. Church Road is a special residential road in town. It has a lot of traffic, but it also has a lot of residences. And it has a lot of very intense usage with the fairgrounds, with the existing sidewalk on Main Street, with the school district right next door. So there's a lot of activity there. So we didn't want to move forward with a design that picked one side over the other until we had had a chance to discuss it, review the options, hear from the public, hear from the residents that lived on the road. And so this public hearing really is that opportunity to start that discussion. There will be more public hearings, there will be more discussion, and there will, by necessity, be a vote to approve any project by the town at large as to whether or not this even proceeds. We may find that the cost is too much. We may find that the 80-20 match from DOT isn't sufficient. We may find that there are other issues that might make one option better than the other or make no option viable. So this really is an open slate and a start of a discussion. We expect that we'll be continuing on with this process of education outreach, information gathering over the next few months. We'll then move on likely with a preferred option design, moving that from basically what's a 30% design into something that's much closer to complete, more discussion, more reliable cost estimates, and then choosing perhaps to bring that to vote. Again, if that's the direction that we here in the select board chooses to put forward, then we would have likely in the next June, a year from now, we would potentially have that vote. So we would really have to have a final proposal ready for February, March timeframe. So it does appear that we have a long ways to go, but we also have a lot to learn and a lot to discuss. So I'm very appreciative of the work done so far by Goral Palmer, the interest in the community has had in investigating this to this point. And I'm looking forward to hearing what people have to say. So Dennis, with that, if you don't mind, I'll invite Goral Palmer up to start their presentation.
I can think of nothing better. Absolutely. Come on up, Goral Palmer. These are our folks. I'm sorry I don't know your names, but I'll just refer to you as the guys here. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Don Ettinger. I'm with Goral Palmer. Also here is Travis Landry, also with Goral Palmer.
Don and Travis.
Yeah, we have some graphics, some role playing color graphics. We were wondering if it was okay if we could just present them on that wall.
Absolutely. You might have to ask, Rick might help you. He's moved too quick, so sometimes he's very helpful. He's familiar with charts and graphs.
Probably help if you wouldn't help.
I was gonna.
Yep.
I was like, I gotta go.
Yep.
I got Oh, God. Hey, all right. Yeah. Johnny on the table.
So while that's getting put up, I will note that we do have some draft plans available on the town website. We will continue to update and upload information on there. We have some public comment that's been received. I'm planning on continuing to put that up. We also have some background on the grant application, the process to date, the anticipated timeframe. So do look to that website or reach out to the town office and we can get printed materials available for you. So, yeah.
Excellent. So what we'd like to do is do a 10-minute presentation on the work we've done to date, looking at two sidewalk options, one on each side of the road. I'm going to have Travis get up and just present that technical presentation for us.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. We appreciate everybody in think Eric mentioned it earlier. We really appreciate the involvement that everybody's had in providing feedback and helping us make decisions on the project. It's very helpful. So I'm just going to start by kind of giving an overview of the project, the graphics you see on the wall over there, and some of the considerations that we had as we developed these two options. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So this project is located on Church Road. It begins at Main Street and it ends at the entrance to the Reedfield Fairgrounds. The scope of this project is to construct a new sidewalk along one side of Church Road. And the purpose of this meeting is to present the two options that we've developed, evaluate the pros and cons, and have a discussion on where the preferred location might be and how we'd like to proceed with the project. Some of the details about the sidewalk, we're proposing a paved sidewalk. This will also include installation of likely concrete slip form curb. And that will be on one side of the road, and it'll be on the side of the road with the sidewalk. We've proposed crosswalks as needed on the project to access the fairgrounds, depending on which side of the road the project or which side of the road we decide to proceed with the sidewalk. And also there could be a crosswalk considered to access the Union Meeting House on the second option. Where we are proposing mid-block crossings, we are going to propose rectangular rapid flashing beacons or lights just to allow for better safety and visibility of people and the crosswalk. So some of the roadway characteristics that make up Church Road. Church Road sees approximately 1,200 vehicles per day. It is a corridor priority 5 roadway, which corridor priority is a Maine DOT classification of roads. They range from 1 to 5, with 1 being an interstate or major route road and 5 being a local or a town road. The speed limit is 25 miles per hour within our project limits. And then we are aware that it changes to 35 miles per hour just beyond the entrance to the fairgrounds. The existing road is approximately 25 feet wide, and it consists of 2 11 to 12 foot travel lanes, 1 in each direction, and variable width gravel shoulders. The western side of the road currently, which on those graphics is the top side, has a drainage ditch along it. And the eastern side of the road generally slopes away from the road and doesn't have a pronounced ditch. There are utilities present within the project limits. Above ground utilities, which are the utility poles and electrical lines, are on the western side of the road, as well as a underground water main that runs along the western side of the road. A brief overview of the graphics you see on the wall. They present the limits of travel lanes, shoulders, existing and proposed. Also show right-of-way limits, which I think has been mentioned previously. Woodlines, trees, sidewalks, wetlands, property owner lines, property owner names, and any drainage features that exist within the project limits. The proposed work, the work that we are planning as part of this project, roadway work is shown in yellow on these graphics. Grading limits are shown in green, a lighter green color. Trees are shown in green if they are proposed to stay as part of the project, and red if they would be impacted or removed as part of this project. Proposed sidewalks are shown in a darker gray color, and existing buildings are shown in a lighter gray color. And as I mentioned, right-of-way and property owner names and property lines are shown in black on those graphics as well. So as I mentioned, we've developed 2 conceptual designs to present to the select board and the public and get feedback. And those are both shown on the wall over there. So I'll now kind of jump into a summary of each design, some pros and cons, and some of the information regarding option 1 and option 2. A brief summary of option 1.
Sir,
Yes.
just 1 second, Catherine.
I noticed that we have a mic now over there. Would it be possible for you to use the mic and point out some of the things that you're mentioning? I think visually it might help us to focus on what you're talking about, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for option one, which is this upper option, we are proposing the sidewalk along the western side of the road. It'll consist of a 5-foot wide sidewalk and a 5-foot wide esplanade or grass area between the road and the sidewalk. That's similar to what is currently on Main Street in this area. I think heading in the eastern or east direction away from where we are now.
Just a quick question. Is that a bird's eye view?
Yes, this is a plan view graphic. So this is above bird's eye looking down on the project. And we covered up one of them just to kind of save space, but this bottom section is a profile view. If you were to cut, almost looking at it through the earth of the profile grade of the roadway, which is just, like I said, this is the roadway center line that we have shown on the project.
Travis, just for people's perspective, can you show where Main Street is?
Yes, Main Street is located on the left side of the sheet and it runs vertically here. And this is Church Road across with the fairgrounds located right above where you see this color key. And I understand it's probably hard for some of the people in the further side. So if there are any questions or clarifications that you want from me, just please raise your hand and I can certainly clarify.
Feel
anything.
free if you need a look, you know, get yourself right in there. And I also posted these in the Zoom chat, links to the same concept plans that are on the website. So hopefully if you're watching along at home, you are able to access those. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. So as I mentioned, option one we have proposed a 5-foot wide esplanade and a 5-foot wide sidewalk. The design that we have shown generally aims to install the sidewalk in front of the existing utility poles. The utility poles vary in how far they are away from the road as you move down the project. So there are some areas that may not have been possible, and I'll talk about those in a little while as we get through into some other options.
Explain for us laymen what a 5-foot esplanade is.
Yes, so the esplanade is a grassed area between the sidewalk and the road. So similar to what you would,
Main Street, that
yes,
12-inch patch of grass.
yes, except this one would be 5 feet wide. So it would be grassed, not landscaped. It could be landscaped if that was something the town wanted to do, but
Is
right
the
now
grass considered landscape that needs to be maintained?
it would need to be maintained. Yes. Yes. So in our discussions with the town, I believe the town maintains the esplanades and grassed areas along Main Street, and I think the intent would be the same for this project.
Is there a structural reason for the esplanade or is it more aesthetic?
It is aesthetic. There are structural reasons to it, and I'll kind of get into that. What I will ask is just if we could hold questions until the end of the presentation, just so I think a lot of these questions I'll answer as I go. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think some of them may come through the presentation, but I appreciate that. And I do like the questions. I'm glad that people are engaged. A lot of times these meetings will have 0 attendees and it's like we show up and present to no one. So I am grateful that people are here. So as I mentioned, the design on option one generally aims to keep the sidewalk in front of the utility poles and avoid impacts and relocations due to the project. Relocation of utility poles due to the project. This option one would eliminate the existing drainage ditch. It would fill it in and we would replace that ditch with a closed drainage system consisting of pipes and catch basins and things like that to collect surface drainage and convey it to the proper outlets that are within the project. I will note that that work is not shown on these graphics. We just haven't gotten to that point in the design yet. Once we get past these concept level graphics, that will be the next thing we look at to develop once we have a preferred option. As I mentioned earlier, we'd be proposing concrete slip form curb along the project. The best comparison I can give that, I think you may have granite curbing along Main Street, but this would just be, and bituminous curbing along Main Street, but this would just be a concrete curb. We do have a proposed mid-block crossing at the fairgrounds, and as I mentioned, that crossing would have RRFBs, and which are the flashing lights to give better visibility to anyone crossing the road. So I'll now get into some pros and cons of this option. Some pros we have, right-of-way impacts. Right-of-way is just property impacts on, anybody's anybody's private property along the project. Property impacts are generally limited on this option to grading, which would be any just smoothing out of the ground surface or driveway work that is needed to install the sidewalk and maintain proper ADA accessible grades. With option one, we avoid impacts to any existing sidewalks along Main Street, and we will likely not need to get into crosswalk improvements at Main Street. This option also provides a very walkable environment with the 5-foot esplanade and grassed area. It provides separation from motorists to the pedestrians, and it's just more pleasant. You don't have someone driving, right next to you as you're walking down the sidewalk. And another benefit that we have with option one, there is some existing lighting on utility poles along the project. I don't think there's lighting on every single utility pole. So that is something that we will definitely investigate and talk with the town on as we progress, if that were to be the option that's chosen. But that is helpful to have a well-lit sidewalk. Some of the cons that we have with option one, with this option, there is a higher likelihood of utility impacts within the project limits. Like I mentioned earlier, there is an underground water main that runs along the project that is just outside the edge of the road. And if we were to move forward with option one, we would be installing drainage structures like catch basins and pipes in close proximity to that water main. And as I mentioned, there could be utility impacts depending on, or with utility poles, depending on the finer details of that design and how it gets laid out. Another con that we have, and this con may not seem like a con to most, but it can be at times, is the removal of open drainage or the ditch. That is sometimes good, sometimes bad for a situation where you want a low maintenance option to drainage. Open ditching or open drainage is preferred, but we would be removing that and replacing it with closed drainage, which can lead to increased maintenance long-term. So that is one thing that we just wanted to note. On the closed drainage topic, for option one, we believe that additional drainage structures would be required to address drainage at the back of sidewalk, pretty much on people's lawns. So what we're doing is where that water could originally freely flow into the ditch, it would be blocked by the sidewalk. And we would need to collect that drainage, transfer it to the roadway drainage system, and then outlet it appropriately on the project. So that is something that could be required with option one. And that could also result in higher costs to the project, as well as higher, I'm sorry, not higher, increased property impacts as part of that. An additional con we have is this new mid-block crossing has been identified as a location where sight distance might be a concern, or motorist speed is also a concern. So anywhere we have the potential for poor sight distance or increased speeds, we are concerned with how the pedestrians will get across the street there, and it's something that we do think about. And as I mentioned, what could result from increased amount of drainage structures along the project, that will also lead to additional costs to the project. And that could make this option more costly than option two. One other consideration that we noted as part of developing this concept plan is what could be proposed is what we considered a hybrid option. This hybrid option would, in places where impacts are, would like to be avoided, where we have utility poles or sensitive property features, we could reduce the footprint by removing the esplanade and putting the sidewalk along the curb line. That would be something you would typically see, on most sidewalks that don't have an esplanade, and it would still function the same way. You would just reduce your property impacts or utility impacts in that specific area. So that is option one. I know that was a lot of information. I'm going to kind of dive into option two now. A lot of this stuff will be kind of a repeat, but I'm gonna go through it all just so we can, there are subtle differences that I will note. Option 2 proposes the sidewalk along the eastern side of the roadway or the bottom side of this graphic. This option consists of a 5.5-foot sidewalk, and that is adjacent to the curb line. So there would be no grassed esplanade for this option. This design that we currently have aims to avoid any impacts to large mature trees. I know there are several of them on the Main Street end of this section of Church Road. So those are great features to have along a sidewalk, and we really aim to avoid any impacts to them. It creates a really walkable environment when you have trees overhanging the sidewalk, and it can be quite pleasant in the summertime. Similar to option 1, right-of-way or property impacts with option 2 are limited, and they would be limited to just grading and any driveway reconstruction that would be required to build the new sidewalk. And one additional item that we would note is we would not need to install a mid-block crossing at the fairgrounds. So we would eliminate the need for that crosswalk, yes. So that does get into some of the pros. Another pro that I would mention is we don't get into any utility impacts for this option. So the underground water main and the utility poles are all located on the opposite side of the street, and we would not likely have any impacts to those features. Some of the cons that we have with option 2. With option 2, the sidewalk construction will need to start closer to Main Street. Having that sidewalk construction start closer to Main Street could lead to additional impacts to crosswalks at Main Street. So in order to meet current requirements for ADA requirements, which is the American Disabilities Act, pretty much anything, any public facility needs to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act. And those requirements are very specific when it comes to crosswalks. And if you touch one side of a crosswalk, you need to upgrade the other side of the crosswalk. So it almost has a snowballing effect where if you touch one, go to the other side. If you're on that side, you go to the next side, and you almost end up rebuilding all of the crosswalk landings at an intersection. Not always the case, but that is something that does come up. So that is a potential con, and that is mostly just due to cost to the project. Another con that we have is, and again, it depends on how you look at it, but it is the mid-block crossing that is not shown on this graphic, but could be considered at the Union Meeting House. That crosswalk, again, as I mentioned, mid-block crossings are sometimes unexpected, and a lot of thought and consideration needs to go into those to make them safe and make sure that pedestrians will be safe at those locations. And another con, the final con that we have on this option is the lighting. As I mentioned, for option 1, the lighting would be on the same side of the road. For option 2, the lighting is on the opposite side of the street, which obviously does not provide as much benefit to lighting the sidewalk. And I will note, as I did with option 1, a hybrid option could be considered with option 2 as well, where maybe the sidewalk is against the curb for the first portion of the project, where we have those large mature trees. And as we move away from the Main Street area, we can kind of pull that sidewalk away from the curb line and create that esplanade and grassed area where it could be a more comfortable walking environment for pedestrians. One other thing I'll touch on is our anticipated schedule. Right now, we are looking at design in 2023 and 2024. And if full funding is secured for the project, we would be looking at construction potentially starting in 2025. So with that, I will open up to questions and answers or the Q&A session. And I assume we'll want to.
I just want to point out, I'm monitoring the chat room in Zoom, so I just want to make sure that I ask this first question.
Yeah.
The first question is, why does option 1 have 5 feet of grass? Has there been a maintenance cost yet on maintaining the existing Route 17 sidewalk grass? People are very worried about the grass being mowed. I don't know if that's a you thing or an Eric thing, but I've asked that question and I just want to put it out there. Eric?
I'll just say it's hard to quantify. I mean, it does take time to manage it. And, resources of time and equipment. So there's no question about that. And to be fair, the equipment, that we have for maintaining the existing sidewalk would be used to maintain this additional section. But of course, that equipment has a cost as well for winter maintenance as well as summertime maintenance. So no doubt about it, this does have an ongoing, albeit modest cost for maintenance relative to our other facilities.
But no hard and fast numbers just yet.
No hard and fast
Okay.
numbers. I'm not sure that those could be arrived at,
Okay.
but there is a cost.
All
There's
right.
no question.
And the
Thank you
equip-
very much.
It sounds like the equipment is already in the area for summer and winter maintenance because it's coming up Main Street to do those things.
Yes, correct.
So it's contiguous. It's not that we have to bring equipment in special for that.
Correct.
And to clarify, the 5 feet of grass is only in option 1, not in option 2.
At this time, yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. All right, rock and roll. Now we can, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Don Ettinger with Goral Palmer. I'd just like to interject and state that these esplanades, these grass strips are optional. It's not a requirement for either side of the road. It provides more separation between the pedestrian space and the vehicle space. That would be the only reason that we throw it on there. If there's right-of-way space, and what right-of-way is the space that the town owns for the roadway. Is this 4-rod road? Is this?
I believe this was a 3-rod road.
Three
Okay,
rods,
so-
that's correct.
So there's a certain width that the town owns for this area, and we have the space to install not only the sidewalk, but that green space, if the town and the public desired such thing, but it's not a requirement.
That sounds good. I want to do this. I want to make sure that we are honoring everyone. I know we have questions here as well. My first question would be if the select board has any questions while we're waiting, and just to double check. Otherwise, I'm going to ask for these folks to go up to the podium.
I
I just
have
have a
some
quick
questions.
follow-up question about the Esplanade. And you'd mentioned a non-maintenance requiring landscaping. So what would that look like? And is it possible, I like the idea of separating the sidewalk from the roadway, but maybe not 5 feet. I mean, you could do a narrower strip, right? And is it possible to do a narrower strip? And what would it look like if it wasn't grass?
Yeah, so I guess my first comment will be, no landscaping is maintenance free in its entirety, unless you did maybe hardscaping might be maintenance free for a longer duration. Some things that could be proposed, and again, this wasn't something that we looked at this point in
Gotcha,
time, but
okay.
we have proposed in other municipalities. We have done things like grasses, shrubs, but it all comes down to what the town would want to install, maintain, and kind of keep up with. So as far as ongoing maintenance, I would say that grass is probably the simplest to maintain. But the possibilities are really, I don't want to say endless, but it can be whatever the town would want it to be. As far as width goes, we can certainly look at a reduced width if that was something that would be desired. I will say that as you get to there is a threshold on the lower end of a width that maybe the grass would not stay as green, or wouldn't stay as nice, may not even grow. So that is something typically I believe we would go with a 3-foot minimum width for something like that. Anything less than that, like I mentioned, we kind of have, you have longevity concerns
Okay.
with just the grass staying.
I want to know. Thank you.
Catherine?
Yes, okay, so I have several. So I'll touch on that first. When we had the Main Street sidewalk constructed, the discussion was to at first have no grass strip. And it was mentioned at that time that having the grass strip helps with traffic calming because it makes it more of a less of a roadway and more of a walkway. And so it's a visual cue to motorists to slow down. Is that correct? Is that kind of a piece of the reasoning of having a Esplanade?
I would agree with that statement. I would also add to it that building off the comment about landscaping, if you did some vertical landscaping there, that would further enhance traffic calming. It will make the curb to curb width field narrower. And that could be done with trees, with small trees or bushes. Can also be done with some type of beach grass that doesn't grow very tall, but if you have a vertical element to that esplanade area, that will certainly enhance, make the roadway feel narrower, and cars will by their nature drive slower.
Okay.
It does. And if I could, just one thing I would
Yes.
add to that. If anybody is looking to kind of see what some of this stuff might look like, a good Google search would be a complete street is what it would be called. And that kind of gets into what you were just saying, where those elements are incorporated into the roadway to make a more user-friendly environment, and also something that it could offer a traffic calming benefit.
Okay.
Carol?
Catherine had
I'm
more.
sorry.
I
I was
have-
trying to
had more.
I
move
have
along,
several. So we are talking about, you've mentioned on both sides of the street about lighting the sidewalk, and so this question goes to Eric, I believe. The Main Street sidewalk is not particularly lit, is that correct? The lighting is on both sides of the road at different points?
Yeah, it's intermittent.
Okay.
I would
And
describe it as
we've been
intermittent.
okay with that?
It depends on who you ask. I mean, we did recently add one by the fairgrounds, so it hasn't been to everybody's satisfaction, but it seems to have met the need.
Okay,
It's something to consider anyway.
okay.
yeah.
And Main Street also already has closed drainage, correct? That was put in when the sidewalk was
Yes, so the
constructed.
Main Street sidewalk has closed drainage in most locations, although it does have open once you get around the corner by the weather vane.
And because that's a state roadway, does the state do the maintenance on that when they come along and clear the drains out annually?
Those drains, yes, the under drains and the cross culverts and all of that, yeah.
Okay, and so on Church Road, if we had those, then that would become a town responsibility?
Yes,
Okay, so there would be some cost to doing that, ongoing cost.
there would. And then periodically, we have to, help out on the Main Street sidewalk because there's drainage that is, affected that we need to take care of. We actually, Carol's house, we did a bunch of work in front of that where we had water running through the earth and then across the sidewalk into the road. We did a bunch of work there that the town paid for. It's something of a partnership. DOT, no offense, does as little as possible, and we do what needs to be done. So
Okay.
that's how it works.
I only have two to go. I'm not sure if you said if any trees would come out. I know you said on the east side, we would maintain as many as possible of the mature trees down towards Main Street. Will there be any trees that would be removed? Because I don't see any red trees there.
So based on the very preliminary look that we gave, the large mature trees would be saved, from what we could tell,
On either side.
on either side of the road. On the Main Street end. As we come back toward the fairgrounds for option one, there were some trees that were impacted as part of the sidewalk installation. But as Dawn mentioned, option one does not only have to have an esplanade area. There are, those hybrid options that if there were sensitive property features or things like trees that people did not want removed, we could look into shifting that sidewalk closer to the curb line and the road and allowing those to be possibly saved.
So
But
are there red marked trees on option one?
there are, yes, they're in this area here, as you move toward the fairgrounds. And I guess I don't know how familiar everybody is with properties, not to call
Right.
anybody's in particular out, but
But they're
not
shown there?
they are, yes. So Carol, and excuse me if I pronounce your name incorrectly, Guimon. And so there would be some, for instance, there are some in front of that.
Okay, we just can't see them from this distance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as we conclude the presentation and the Q&A, please feel free to come up and take a
Yep.
look at the graphics.
And what is the depth of the water main that you mentioned is on option one side of the road?
I do not have that information with me right now, and I'm not sure that we have fully dug into that design at this time.
We would guess 5 to 6 feet of cover, typical for most water mains in the state of Maine. So it's
Yeah.
down about 5 feet.
And so constructing on that side of the road, what is the impact from the drainage, I believe is what you'd be talking about, to that water main? Do we know that yet?
Yeah, everything on the surface is not going to impact the water main. So you can put the curbing in the sidewalk, and if you're doing an esplanade, there's no impacts there. It's just the underground pipes. They're going to be at similar depths. So we try to co-locate them side beside each other. There may be spots where we have to cross our drainage over or under the water main. So those are where it gets challenging to try to design around that. So, and we're just not at that level in the design at this point.
Okay, but it is an interference.
Yes,
Okay.
more than likely.
And then I just want to comment on several people have already noted, I think it's really important fairly soon to put some markers up, even just the little orange flags on the little stakes, you know, the little metal stakes that show where the town line is for where the road comes out. And then if we could possibly ask that people leave them there for a while and not remove them, that would, I think, really help people. So I really hear that. Thank you. I'm all done.
Carol, I want to go, Carol, and then Doug, is this a question? I just want to make sure she gets heard. Okay, yes, indeed. Go
I
ahead.
just have one quick
Yeah.
one. Did the town ask for the Esplanade to be included in the thing, or is that just something that DOT did?
So through scoping or developing our, what we were going to propose for the project, that was kind of just a discussion that we had with the town, with Eric, and through just developing it, we chose this side of the road. As we've kind of mentioned, it was put there not arbitrarily, but just, we could have shown 4 different options, I guess would be my comment. We could have shown this option with an esplanade, without an esplanade. We could have shown this option with an esplanade, without an esplanade. So what we landed on doing was showing one of each, one on each side of the road, just to kind of give an idea of what we had for design options.
Because it seems on both sides, there are some homes very close to the road, and that just infringes on personal property all along. And you're right, a very narrow esplanade does not grow good grass.
Yes, yeah. So as we mentioned, those hybrid options can be considered to kind of just avoid any, impacts to properties that we want to take a look at. So
That was my other question. I think you said there were very minimal property impacts on option 2 and none on option 1. Was that correct?
no,
Okay. So I heard
yes.
that
So
wrong.
I won't say that there will be no property impacts. From the 2 options that we have laid out, the sidewalk will be within town property.
Okay.
Grading and driveway work that has to happen to install the sidewalk could very likely extend beyond the town property, and that would be impacts that would be addressed through the project.
And those costs would be, that work would be done and covered by the cost of the project.
That's
not by the
correct.
Property owners.
Yes,
So
that's
that would be
correct.
improvement to their property.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just to further explain that, the sidewalk will be built inside the town's right of way. It's just you have to blend in that new sidewalk to existing ground. So people's lawns will be blended in, and those will likely go beyond those lines that they're going to mark in the field for everyone. The same with driveways.
Excellent. I don't think we have any more select board questions for you, so I want to make sure we can get everyone in here. If you have something, if you want to go to the podium, just generally will help us hear you, because we have folks who are Zooming and we have the microphone there. So if you want to go ahead and go up to the podium and ask a question, please do. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Can we hear from Doug first, who had his hand up?
Yeah, whatever you want, Doug. We just want to make sure you go to the, yeah.
You have to go to the podium.
I'm
So we can-
sorry,
so
buddy.
people can hear
Otherwise,
you.
we can't hear you, and I
It's
apologize.
the online folks who can't.
Yeah,
hear.
yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Doug. There we go. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Took me longer to walk up here than it's going to take, yes.
And, bless your heart.
With reference to the water main and then the new under drain drainage system, what actually is the width of the right of way on Church Road, and does it remain the same over the whole length of the project?
That's a great question. It does remain the same. It is a 3-rod road, and forgive me for not knowing that dimension offhand.
49.5.
Yes, I believe it's 49.5 feet. So that is shown on this plan, on these 2 plans. So again, feel free to stop by and take a look, but it is consistent through the project based on the information we were provided.
So
Thank
that's
you, Doug.
total width.
Yes,
So we could assume that the center line is pretty close to the center. So it's approximately 25 feet from the center line out on each
that's correct.
that's in the town right of way.
Yep,
Okay.
that is correct.
Rick, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Rick Wilson, and I live at 1124 Main Street. I live across the street from the current sidewalk, and I'm a proponent of wherever you put the sidewalk. I love what the sidewalk has done to the village. I love seeing kids walk to school, riding their bikes safely. I was a nervous wreck for years, sitting on my porch watching kids up and down that street riding their bikes. I love families walking on it, so definitely a proponent of it. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Refill Water Association. I'm the president of and just to make sure you knew about the water line, and it appears that you do. And so we provide water to 22 properties in the center of town. And so I'm glad you're thinking about that, because that was our concern. We had our meeting the other night, that not only during construction, but after construction, it's all done. 5 years from now, we have a water break. Not only do we have to fix it, we have to go through the sidewalk to get to it. So that's just something we wanted you to consider. And I thank you that you are considering that.
Thank you, Rick. We appreciate that.
Would that be
Hello?
true that the water line would be covered by the sidewalk?
Yeah.
The
Yes.
actual pavement of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello.
Christine Poulin, 58 Church Road. I've got a couple of questions and I'm not sure if they're DOT or if they're select board, but there's a lot of houses on the side of option one, the western side, where there's drainage that goes from people's cellars into that culvert. How would that be addressed with the enclosed drainage? Because seasonally wet means different things to different people.
Good point.
Question. We have information on, what we've taken for notes in the field. Survey has picked up some of these drains, and there are details that the department, the main DOT, and anybody who uses their details has to address that and tie those drainage pipes into the drainage system.
Okay.
So they would be tied into the
So the
proposed
existing cellar drainage will continue
to function.
to function.
Yes, that would be the intent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then another question, which I think might be more select board, but I'm not 100% certain. So currently, the way we utilize our property, we have an RV, and our driveway is eeny weeny small. We have our RV parked off to the side, and we need to access our property in 2 or 3 different places, one to turn it around and one to drive it out, and another place when we store it. If we put a sidewalk on that side, what can be done to mitigate that so that I can continue to use my property the way I have been able to use it for when I purchased it?
That's not us, that's them.
Well, it's
Said Catherine,
us.
very relieved.
Actually, it's us. If we're going to compensate or do something for you, that would be a town cost, I would think, to make you right. If
Okay.
we're infringing on your current property and how you're using it.
Yeah.
So I think budgetary wise, it's us. How we get it done is probably them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
so-
just want to get that out, that will need to be dealt with one way or the other
Yeah.
to make this girl happy.
I think if you have, like like where I live, I have it's not necessarily a driveway, but it's a way to get onto my property.
Mhm.
I think those would be absolutely taken into consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Ms. Poole. Hello, Mr. Ena.
Me again,
Yes, sir.
52 Mountain View Lane, I think, maybe. Will I be allowed back home tonight or not? Couple of questions. For options 1 or 2, it's my understanding, and hopefully definitively you guys can say this tonight, that there will be no takings involved to construct either option.
What did you ask? Kat?
Take-
A
Ralph?
taking means private property
Yes,
to construct a public right of way.
yes.
So is that off the table? Are we just basically operating exclusively within the town right of way, with the exception of the modifications where the abutters are involved?
So the question is difficult to answer at this stage. So we couldn't commit yes or no today. We'd have a better handle on it when we get to 50% design. What I will tell you is based on what we've looked at today, to date, the sidewalk will fit inside the right of way.
Okay.
With or without an Esplanade. So we
Good.
don't need to acquire land to get to that point.
Mhm.
However, to grade out people's lawns, and
Surely.
people's driveways, there, you say taking, there will be easements, temporary construction easements that will need to be acquired through that process. I believe, while this is a town project, this is a local administered project with state DOT funding. So if this project is funded for construction, Maine DOT may be involved in the right-of-way process. And I heard a gentleman in the back say eminent domain. Maine DOT, when they do their projects, even though they may settle with you on a grading easement or a driveway easement, they still, at the end of the day, even if you've signed the paperwork, they still may do a condemnation by eminent domain, so they can record it at the state. So
So,
it's a complicated question to answer.
and you can't answer it
I can tell you we're
in its
comfortable.
entirety right now.
Exactly. But the sidewalk, we're very comfortable. We can place the sidewalk inside the right of way based on the right of way information that's been given to us by the state.
Okay. Either option. The right of way for traffic passage will not be constricted, is my understanding, because it is probably one of the main thoroughfares in the town. People drive too fast on it, and if it gets constricted by any amount by virtue of this project, we are enhancing public health and safety issues. So that travel lane, those travel lanes, north and south, stay the same.
That's correct. The difference will be is we're going to be installing curbing adjacent to the new sidewalk. So one side of the street will have curbing. Our template is calling for 11-foot travel lane with a 2-foot shoulder. So you'll have 13 feet from center line to the face of the curb. It's not very wide.
It's not very wide, and I'm wondering how that reflects with the town's considerations about plowing snow after the fact that that curbing is in place, but that's a discussion for a different time.
It is. I would also add to that, if we think there's a heavy bicycle
There will be.
movement in this community, consideration for a wider shoulder before you do your sidewalk should be something to consider. We're talking about a 5-foot esplanade and a 5-foot sidewalk. Is there value in a 5-foot shoulder, no esplanade, and then a 5-foot sidewalk for space? We
Option one.
wouldn't build it on the other side, but at least on this side, you build it wide enough for vehicles, for bikes, and for pedestrians. Something to consider. And we're early enough on the project that we
Yeah,
can
we're
consider.
just scratching the surface, if anybody blesses it to begin with. Option one, the drainage subject. We just spent some significant money rebuilding the swales. Now they would have to be closed in, and we would be running drainage somewhere. I assume that would require state permission to tie in with their drainage system on Route 17.
There are
It's
several.
got to go somewhere.
There's several
Where is it
outlets.
going to go?
There are several outlets. There's one midstream down the hill that shoots across the street.
But that would require a diversion permit into wetlands?
It's an existing cross culvert today. So
Okay,
the ditch
so-
runs down and shoots.
So
out
by
underneath the
virtue of
road.
the fact that it's been there for some protracted period of time, we could do it?
Yep.
But has the engineering study been done to determine what that volume of water would do to that swale, which is now probably underutilized?
Yeah, so the intent of this project is to maintain the same travel patterns for the drainage. So you have an
Okay.
open ditch today. The outlets for that open ditch, we would maintain with our design. That's our goal. We would still do hydraulics.
Okay.
We'd still
Because
figure
now
out the
you're
size.
feeding a concentrated,
Correct. Correct.
focused collection of water, and we just lived through that. So, okay. No, I want to be on the record as saying I like the idea of a sidewalk. I think it makes sense. But there are a lot of issues to consider. And thank you for at least the preliminary, and at least I think now the property owners on Church Road have some measure of comfort that they're not going to have the front lawns dug up and paved over. But the last thing, trees. There will be some level of disturbance at the head end of the intersection. And it's been my experience that when this happens, no matter how careful you are, when you are disturbing ground around mature trees, 5 years from now, you may find, and I'm sure you folks have experienced this, that those trees will not survive. The root damage, structural damage will ultimately come to play because they're older and they're not as vital as they were when they were young, like I am. Thank you.
I'd just like to clarify a point that you made, something about when the designs are at a 50% level, you would have a much better idea of the the width you would be going outside of the town right of way, and those so that would all be known by the time the plans are developed prior to the town voting on it. So everyone would be aware ahead of time, correct?
When is the town voting on it?
In June of next year.
Yes. To answer the question, yes.
Okay.
Excellent. I just want to go ahead, if you want to go ahead and be a speaker, sir, and then I have someone online who is going to ask a question as well. So you're up. Thank you.
Eric Winter, 823 Main Street. Have you studied something about the volume of pedestrians and where they're coming from? And whether that means people parking at the corner, or where are these people using this coming from? And how many of them are there and what time of day?
Yeah, so right now, we don't have any studies or information on the volume of pedestrians. I can say that what we have tried to accomplish with this project is connecting the fairgrounds, which does currently have parking, with the Main Street area. So that's kind of been, that's how we determined our limits of what we're doing. And that was kind of the goal of the project, was to connect those two, I guess you could call them destinations. But right now, we don't have any information on the volumes of pedestrians or anything.
So our firm was hired after the town and the DOT had made a decision. They wanted to build a sidewalk from point A to point B. We don't know the history of how the need for the sidewalk came about. So there may be planning studies that were done that looked at pedestrian trip generations, but our firm was not involved in that.
Well, I'm not for that or against that, but if there was a big parking area where people could park there and then walk to the fairgrounds, that would be a consistent development. But I don't know whether that's part of anybody's thinking.
One thought that I had heard is by building this piece, you now have a circumferential walkway, I think, to the schools, through the fairgrounds, to the schools, down to, is it Route 17, the sidewalk. So you have a loop trail that you're kind of finishing the last piece of it. I'll defer to the town on that.
Eric, can you possibly address this issue?
Yeah, so I think that when we were looking at the grant application, there was the intent to work on finishing that loop, to kind of connect the fairgrounds to the main street sidewalk. I think that the use that's there, it's not quantified. We don't know exactly how many people use it or what direction they're coming from, other than to say that anecdotally, the weight of the activity seems to come from the RSU side of the compound, in large part because that's where people are coming and going from. We did see a lot of bicycle and pedestrian activity there, but I think one important thing to point out is that this would really allow for that connection, that flow of traffic. And actually, I had a question for the engineers. We've had some public comment about the possibility of putting on-street parking in lieu of the Esplanade. And I find that intriguing. And I'm just wondering if that is an option that we could look at as well. But because that might help in a few different areas, but it also might cause more problems. I don't know.
Yeah, so one major consideration that we had, and we did see that comment come, and we did take a brief look at it just before the meeting. With the addition of the on-street parking, the limited impacts that we currently have may not still apply. So right now we have an 11-foot lane, a 2-foot shoulder, and a 5-foot esplanade proposed, say for option 1. Typically, a parking stall is around 8 feet wide, and by proposing a parking stall, we would actually need to move the sidewalk away from the road to have enough space for that parking. And that's all assuming that there's no roadway work to the travel lanes along Church Road. So that would mean the center line of the road stays the same and everything is built outward. So while that's something we haven't looked at in detail at this time, it's something we could look at, but we just kind of raise that as one concern and something that has been flagged on the project as something of importance.
I'm going to counter what Travis said. So if we've got a 2-foot shoulder, we've got a 5-foot esplanade before we get to our sidewalk, there's 7 feet there. If you want on-street parking, you need 8 feet. It's not much of a difference if you're willing to give up your esplanade. But then you're looking at a sea of pavement, right? You're looking at 11-foot lane and 8-foot paved shoulder for parking, curbing, and you're going right to your sidewalk. So I think you have the space in your right of way. It's going to fill up a lot of it. You're not going to have any green strip. And if people are parked there, I think it's fantastic. It will add to traffic calming because it'll feel like 2 22-foot wide lanes. But if nobody is parked there, it's going to feel like a highway and people are going to go a lot faster. So it helps us in one area, it hurts us in another. So I think thought should be put in strategically. Where would that be? Would it be the entire length, just at specific locations?
Excellent. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think I heard someone say that this will complete a loop. That is, there's another way to get there already. Is that correct?
Through the fairgrounds. So you can go from the sidewalk up through the fairgrounds trails into the parking lot and out onto Church Road, which a lot of people do. And then they walk down Church Road and they either cross and go behind the Union Meeting House and past the library, or they walk down Church Road to Main Street when they're making loops of, walking times.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to a person who is joining us. I don't want to introduce themselves via Zoom, and I think you'll see them when they start talking behind me as well. Noel, if you want to go ahead, introduce yourself and just ask your question.
Thank you, Dennis. Momador, I'm zooming in from.
Hang on.
You'll have to turn up yours.
Okay, I'm going to turn mine up. Okay. Hi there, Noel.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
All right, thank you. My name's Noel. I live at 128 Church Road. So my house is not in front of where the sidewalk is planned, but me and my wife and my baby, we walk on the road quite a bit. And traffic is a big concern of us. The amount that people, slow down for pedestrians is minimal. And so we're a big fan. We're a big fan of the sidewalk, me, my wife, and baby. We spend a lot of time walking on the road, and traffic definitely needs to be calmed down, and we need to increase safety for pedestrians. I see a lot of children out there riding their bikes and other people walking. So definitely, I wouldn't want to see the roadway increased in width in any way. And anything we can do to calm traffic down and increase safety for pedestrians. I don't exactly understand people's concerns about folks' private property on there, because I feel like any addition or investment that this community makes in the road is going to increase property values down there more than any marginal amount of property loss. So just wanted to throw that out there. So big fan of the project.
Thank you, Noel. Oh boy, little bit of a Lou Gehrig moment there. Today. Go ahead, Virginia. You can step right up. Thank you very much, Noel. Just ask your question and move it.
So I have a couple.
Sure.
So on your plans, there is no image on our property. We're 39 Church Road. There's no image of our mature cherry blossom tree on there in your graphs. And then our driveways, we have a very short frontage. We are very close to the road from where our house is built, and our driveways are already super short. And there's like no way to extend our driveways deeper into our yard because we have a drop off. So I'm kind of concerned on how that's going to happen. The house was built, it said on our papers in 1792. And it's been there. That's our driveways. And then has there been any discussion or thought of doing a split plan? So like you start on one side of the road where the fairgrounds is, and then you cross over where there's more yard frontage to the homes. I know the drain is a concern, but if you crossed over where the actual culvert begins, I believe it's just before her property on one side of her driveway. Christine, which is yours? Christine and Josh.
We're up
right here. Yep. So if you go past her driveway, like just right there and cross, that's where the culvert begins. The upper part of her property has no culvert. So your drainage would all be that side, but all the houses, all of our old, I think our houses on that side are kind of very old. I don't know the history. I don't care. Sorry. But we are super close to the road. And during snow blowing or snow plowing, if you guys are going to be snow blowing those sidewalks, where are you going? You know, my homeowner's insurance is already concerned. If that snow gets any closer to our house, that the foundation of our house might rot away because it has so much water melting in the spring. And, you know, a lot of people are for this project, and we had a mild winter this year. There was one winter, I sent an email to Eric. I said, hey, can you please let all the people know that don't live on Church Road and want this sidewalk? Can you ask them to take a drive down our road with the 8-foot snowbanks in our front yards? Where's that gonna go? Closer to our houses. So, you know, have these things been thought of or concerned, or are you guys just the design pretty pictures?
So I'm gonna take like a couple steps back, and I'm gonna start with your first question about the cherry tree.
Yep.
So from what you're saying, the tree did not make it onto the plans. Anything that is existing on these plans currently is shown from the survey that was collected for the project. So if the survey didn't pick it up, unfortunately, we don't have it shown on the plans. Now that we know about it, it is something that we can either approximate on the plans, or if survey were to ever need to go back out, we can flag to them as something that we would like collected. But it is something that we can take measurements to, or use aerial imagery like Google Earth to kind of locate it and put it on the plan. So that way we can add notes to it and make sure that it's something that's considered as part of the project. So that's the tree, and forgive me if I lose track of some of your questions, just feel free to remind me. The next question you had was regarding the split design, where we kind of use both sides of the road in different areas. It's certainly something that we can consider. Right now, we just kind of have this, you know, option 1, option 2, and as I think I mentioned earlier, there's really could have been 4 different options that we had, and just for the sake of getting something on the paper to start a discussion, this is what we kind of landed on. But that's not to say that a mid-block crossing could be proposed at some location along the project, and, you know, the sidewalk shifted to the other side of the road. So that is definitely something that can be considered, and we'll work with Eric and the town and the abutters and the public to kind of come up with what that might look like before we proceed with the design. The next one I believe you had was snow removal.
Driveways.
Oh, sorry, driveways, yes.
Yep, proximity.
So at this point in time, we haven't dug into the specifics of the driveway designs. As part of the development of the project's design and the plans and all of that stuff for construction, what we would look at are cross sections. Those are pretty much just if you cut the road and looked at it as though you were kind of eye level with the dirt. And we'll look at what the slopes look like, what the sidewalk would look like in that view, and also what the driveway designs would look like and how we tie those in to the existing conditions. And part of that review that we do with those cross sections, those will influence where the grading limits and the slope lines come. And I think that's something that we just haven't gotten there yet. But it is something that, you know, we will look at for the entire project length, depending on, or not depending on, but based on which design we choose or which design is chosen to proceed.
Snow blowing.
Snow removal. Yes, that is a question that I think is very common. A lot of people, and it's a very valid concern, because we do live in Maine and there can be seasons with a lot of snow. So we definitely hear that concern. As far as ways that could be managed without providing snow storage areas, I guess it would come down to, and I don't want to put Eric on the spot, but it would come down to the town's clearing of the sidewalk. You're absolutely correct. Moving or putting a paved sidewalk moves the snowbank back. It does. It absolutely does. And that's something that we can manage through grading. We can manage through, how we, as Don mentioned, blend that sidewalk in from the sidewalk to the existing ground and kind of make everything look complete. We can look to manage grading to manage that surface drainage, but that doesn't necessarily help with the snowbank pile. So I don't have a lot of insight on that, but it is something that we keep in mind and will keep in mind if, for any property that's within the project as we progress the design. It is snow storage is something that we do look at.
Okay, and then one more question for probably the select board on this. When this design's finished and, you want to put it on a vote in June, can it be finished and we do the public hearing before you print it on the warrant questions, before you have the ballots? Like, we're having a public hearing about the fairgrounds on the 16th, but the ballots are already going out on the 13th. So can we meet again and go over what this final design is and kind of go from that instead of, oh, this is what's going to be on the ballot anyways, but here's your public hearing. We're having a public hearing
Sure.
after the cart's passed, after, cart before the horse, whatever, however you want.
Sure, sure. And this is June of next year.
Yeah, I know
Just to
it's
point
June
out,
of next
not
year, so
June.
that's why I'm
yeah.
trying to get this out here now, so that you guys
absolutely.
can plan next year,
Yeah.
that it comes before the absentee ballots go out, before the ballots are even printed, because the public can bring very, concerning issues, and to have a question already there that they're gonna have to vote on before those issues were even addressed or brought up, that could actually change what that question should be. And then there's a lot of community that don't come to, public hearings and whatnot, or hear about it until, after the fact. So,
I can give you some information on that. So a public hearing is something that's held after the whole proposal is designed, and it's meant to give information, not to collect feedback. So that's the hearing. And so as far as I can remember, in our town, we don't have just a public hearing. So throughout the year, we have other meetings where we solicit public input. So like with the budget for this year, we had a public meeting in March, I believe, where we had a few people here. And we talked about the different budget issues and took input from people. And at that point, we haven't finalized anything, so it can still be discussed and changed. Once you get to the public hearing, the hearing is on what is on the ballot, and it's not able to be changed then. And that's Maine state law tells us we have to do it that way. And it has to be so many days prior to the election, and the election date is the actual date. It's not the absentee ballot date, and that's set by law. And so when we went to the secret ballot, which if you've noticed, we don't ask anymore, do you guys want to still do this? We just do it because the town for 10 years said, yes, we want to keep doing it. So we are just doing that. It does take away some of that option, because if you have an on the floor town meeting, people can stand up and propose a change to something, and it can be seconded and discussed and voted on, and then the changed thing is what you have. But with the secret ballot, we can't do that. And so that date, I think it's June 13th this year.
That's the devote.
That's the actual date that you work backwards from in terms of posting public hearings. So this is all stuff that's set by state law. So the really important times, and the answer is yes, we will have them, is having meetings earlier in the year. So like November, December, as we're getting information back from you folks, but it isn't finalized. So that becomes the input. Well, I mean, we're going to have more before then, but at least by then. And then in January and February, when we actually are getting to the final stage, that's where we want to have all the input, because things can still be changed then. Then there'll be the final plan, and that's what the hearing is for. But at that point, it's just to understand what it is and to say, yes, we agree, or no, we don't agree. But it's not to change it at that time. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So the time to change it is prior to that. And so that's the issue we run into every year with budgeting, is that when you get to the actual hearing, it's the final time to just hear about it, not to change it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So with that new knowledge I have, the fairgrounds meetings didn't get open to the public until like just last month, and it's already on the ballot with a ballot question. And it wasn't very well publicized, the planning committee, to involve the public with the planning. It was a very closed room. I literally just heard about it from one of your select board meetings when you added them as an ad hoc. And it's on, like you said, the hearings, it's a done deal, but there wasn't really an open to it.
We'll give that one to
So-
Steve because that's his committee.
I would say, Virginia, it's a very different story because yes, there's something on the ballot in June, but it's not to approve a plan. It's just to say, to give the town permission to seek grant funding to go out and do that. That's what it is. The planning is ongoing. And it might end up on a ballot in November, or it might not, because it might not be done. Right?
I was told
So-
last July that those questions don't go on November. November's like the other type of election. It's not town business.
No, you can have a special town meeting.
It depends.
Yeah, you
But
can have a special town
You
meeting.
can, but
That's what we would
like,
call
like I
it.
said, that's also a might, right?
Mhm.
If it's done and read on. So like, it is really different because what you would be voting on when the sidewalk is done is you'd be voting on, yes, we want to do this and do this plan, right? That's not what you're voting on in this coming June. You're voting on simply not approving any kind of plan, but just saying, we want to give the town permission, because we need to get permission to seek that grant funding. And I would say to you, and I really hope you come to the public meeting next week, not a public hearing, right? And I think the key piece of that, the most important thing I really want people to understand is we know from the select board point of view that without question, we made mistakes. And I don't want to hijack the sidewalk thing, but just real
Yeah, I'm
quickly
sorry.
respond to you.
I kind of went off
We
topic.
made, we did not do a great job the first time around of getting input from everybody. And the purpose of having the ad hoc committee meet first was there's a lot of hard feelings with the different people on different committees, the town committees, the people who really dig into this. We have people on all those committees who know a little bit about what they're doing, that they didn't get their voices heard. They weren't able to meet together. The communication wasn't great. We thought we needed to do that first, not to come up with a final plan, but to say, here's a proposal. Similar to what we're doing tonight. This is a proposal.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up and just introduce yourself at the podium so folks at home can hear you nice and loud. Thank you, Joel.
You can pop up again.
Joel Parker, and just going to ask on behalf of Christine, I didn't think of that myself, but that's pretty smart observation. All the mailboxes are on the western side of the road, so yeah, she does bring up a good point. I don't know if they have to be all moved to the eastern side or how that usually works with the sidewalk, or they can be just incorporated behind the sidewalk.
Good question.
Jeep drives it.
So they wouldn't need to be moved to the other side of the sidewalk. They would just kind of stay in their same location. They would be reset as part of the project. And I think it's a pretty big process to move a mailbox location. And I think Don has something he wants to.
Yeah.
So the intent would be to keep the mailboxes on the same side of the street that they are. Are they on both sides? Or are they all on one side today?
Western side.
Okay. Because when we do Google Earth, and I think even our survey might show them on both sides. So that might be an update we need to do. So long story short, if you have mailboxes and you're installing a sidewalk in the same space, you're going to want at least 4-foot passage behind the mailbox. So there'll be curb. The face of the mailbox will be flush with the curb, and they're typically about 2 feet wide. So you're going to want at least a 6-foot wide sidewalk space. Would coordinate with the town on what their sidewalk plow width is, to make sure we got enough width. So we're basically building the sidewalk around it. It might be all paved. The advantage of the esplanades that we've mentioned, whether it's 3 feet or 5 feet, that's a good spot to put those mailboxes in there, and it's not in conflict with the sidewalks. So, so we can work around it. We've got some little details we can do. So the intent would be the mailboxes would stay. And is mail delivered by truck, by vehicle, I assume?
Yeah.
It's not a walker, right?
Right.
Okay, so the idea is they can just drive up next to it, next to the curb and open each one of the
And
doors.
that's replaced as part of the project cost, not anything to do with the particular property owner.
Correct. The way it works is I think the mailbox itself is legally every property owner's. But the contractor would probably replace the post. So he basically would install the post and then he'd move your mailbox onto that new post. He'd work with the property owners. So there's some finessing to it, but there would be no cost to the property owner. It'd be part of the construction project.
I have like 2 other questions and concerns too. So with your organization, and we've talked about some of these concerns already about how close some of the houses and trees are to the project pass. The people from your organization is like they slowly drive or do like a walk in the project area, or you base it more on like Google Earth maps, or how does that planning work? Do you like physically go there and like take a really close look? Because my wife and I walked it with and someone else walked it with us too, to kind of take a look, and this makes sense because we're talking about, like you said, like a 3-rod road having 25 feet off the road. You look at 25 feet off the center line at our house and you're sitting in our living room watching TV with us once you get in there if you want, but it's really close. And I don't know if someone's like thinking that walking down the road, say, hey, 25 feet from the center line, and I'm looking at this little yellow house, and you're right up in their windows, like with the sidewalk. And I know that's eminent, the town owns it, it's right away, what do you call it? But just that common sense factor of, hey, yeah, someone walking down there and saying, looking like, oh yeah, I know the right of way is 25 feet, but holy cow, look, this brown house right before the yellow house is, it's really close to the road, and I'd be right up against their front door. Or this one of the, but well, that too, I guess that's interesting.
To answer your first question, we've already walked the site once with town officials. We'll be walking it numerous times as we work through the design. And you're absolutely right. There are monuments out there. There's iron pins out there, and there's some granite bounds out there along these properties. And if you're one of the homeowners that have that, you'll be able to see where it is. And a lot of cases between the edge of pavement and somebody's front door, about half of that lawn area is probably inside the town's right of way. So not every property, some properties are set back, but the ones that are closer to the road, that might be a good check. These plans do show the properties that are closer. Looking here, this is your property here. So you can see the right of way line is not quite halfway on your lawn, depth between the edge of pavement and your building. Would be what's owned by the town. And then as you get down in here, you see something similar. These actually look like they're set further back. Your house is probably one of the closest to the road. This
So
house
that's
is
the
close to-
right of way line.
That
I think that was
dashed black
pointed out
line.
previously.
Yeah, that
Okay.
dashed black line on these plans is the right of way line. And there's another one up here. So you'll see that's the width of the land that's owned by the town. And they also show up down here, and it depends on what side you put the sidewalk on. So.
And I just have one further question or concern to bring up to the town too as well. We're asking for grant money and get some DOT funding and mix it all in, but then I just want to know the final cost of maintaining these sidewalks that everyone's a big fan of. But we live in a town of 2,000 plus people, and I don't know if I've heard a straight number of like the actual budget it costs to maintain the sidewalk on 17 already. I know we had some big winners like we talked about before, where we do have like a little bit of esplanade on that sidewalk, and I don't know how much it costs to mow it. I've heard some people say, hey, we've had a snowstorm, as an estimate, it's going to take 4 hours to clear the snow on this sidewalk that's like a mile long. And it seemed like the snow blowers out there all day to remove the snow. So I'm thinking you add that to Church Road, another half mile of sidewalk clearing, just like someone's full-time job in the wintertime to keep it snow blowed and salted or whatever it needs to be, because even in the wintertime, you see ice and other stuff building up on it. It can be a little treacherous if you don't properly maintain it. So is there a number out there for the cost of mowing the esplanade, the snow blowing, the whatever maintenance it costs, having to repave them eventually? Are we on the hook for repaving these or filling in cracks eventually? I'm just concerned about that. It seems like, we're going for free grant money, quote unquote, free grant money, but then the townspeople are left on the hook with the taxpayer money later on to keep it going and maintain it.
Eric, I
Thank you,
don't think we have, you said we don't have that number currently.
No, it'd be, I mean, we could make an estimate, but it would be quite hard to come by, and it would be probably fairly inaccurate.
But we could get it.
We know there's a cost. There's no
Right.
question. We have. Yes, we can.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I think that's a great idea.
But we could probably ask maintenance, say, to I think that, I think their time logs that we all, as select board members, look at when we're approving warrants for payment, show the time that they spend on different projects. And so maybe we could just ask them to denote, I spent an hour doing the grass on the side of Route 17, or it took me a half an hour or whatever. And that would include the loading up time for the trailer and the mower and unloading it and so on. And then I know in the winter, we wait to do the sidewalk on Main Street until after DOT has finished their plowing, because they plow right up onto the sidewalk and then we remove it from the sidewalk. They probably have some time that's been noted that they're doing that. So I think the time part we can look at, and then the equipment is, the mower would be hard because it's used for all the mowing in town, but the equipment that we use for the sidewalk, that's also used at the transfer station, is that correct?
Yeah, so
And I-
we could estimate hours.
We could come up with some sort of an estimate.
It seems like a valid concern to me, very valid.
Sure,
And
yeah.
I think we should do our best to look at the logs, the maintenance logs, and analyze them. And do the best we can with that. I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
Excellent. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Yes, indeed. Just want to point out our previous public hearing. We have another public hearing scheduled for tonight. I just want to let you guys know we're getting there. We just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. Go ahead there. Hello.
Hi, my name is Joan Weeby, and I live at 25 Church Road. And I think the sidewalk on 17 is wonderful. I think it's well used. I think it's important, but I'm not sure that we need a sidewalk on Church Road. I don't think there's that much foot traffic. I think it's going to be a big impact for a lot of houses, mine included. And I wonder how much 20% of this project would be and how that could be used to slow down the traffic on the road. If we could slow the traffic down with speed bumps or whatever, I could make a big difference in the safety of the road. And my daughter walks often on this road, and there's not that many people walking. People go, they park up at the parking lot at the fairgrounds, and they walk the trails. There's miles of trails. You don't need to walk on the road.
That loop, there is a loop existing that comes past the school, down over the hill, and then back up. I'm not sure the exact, past the weather vane.
Right.
So the idea that this is completing a loop to me seems, it's extra. This is an extra part of the loop, I guess. And for we've lived in this house
50 years.
for 54 years. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time on that street, and yeah, it's the speed of the cars. It's not I don't think there's a huge volume of users. There is, it's the slowing of the traffic that to me is the big concern. And I walk from 25 Church Road up to the fairgrounds every day when I'm home and with my dog, and yeah.
Has anybody looked into like speed bumps or other things that could slow down the road besides signs?
Sure. I guess traffic calming, I think one of the ideas behind this was that the sidewalk itself may be traffic calming and speed calming. Is that kind of what we're thinking with these designs?
Yes, yeah. Yep, they can offer a traffic calming effect. As we mentioned earlier, using vertical landscaping or just having a curb and sidewalk there can often
I
slow
can
traffic.
assure you, people will still speed on that road. They come down.
Well, they speed
into
on all
town.
roads.
Yes, yes, but it's.
So the other thing that I'll mention, in one option, there is a crosswalk up at the fairgrounds.
Mhm.
That's kind of in the area where the speed reduction starts. It's the high point, you're heading downhill. You could do a raised crosswalk here. So you could create a speed table here for that crossing. It would make it safer. It would slow traffic down. The concern I would have is they go over that and then they're going to accelerate coming down the hill. So in doing so, you may want to consider one or two more locations where you do vertical traffic calming with a speed table or a speed hump. The way to control the speed is to have a regular patterns where you're forcing them to slow down. Otherwise, if you have great distances, they're going to speed up between
or hire a state police person. to be right.
Absolutely. It's law enforcement, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just another concern of my mom's is the slope on 25, that 25 Church Road, the swale, like the drainage, we get a lot of sand coming across right now and kind of
Got
between
big ruts in my driveway. It comes
between
right down
us and
through
our
the
neighbor.
driveway.
And it's like, we're just trying to look at, like, if you did put a sidewalk with a curb on the lower plan,
No, we're on the other side.
option
No,
two.
they're option two. They're
The
not-
25 Church Road Weeby, WIEBE, WIEBE.
25.
25. The lawn is so low compared to where the road is right now. We were just like, there would have to be some sort of a retaining wall or something. I don't know. We're trying to imagine what that would look like in terms of trying to.
Are you in the brown house?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is potentially historic
Yes.
eligible?
Yeah.
Yes,
Observations are very good.
thank you.
Your building and foundation are lower than the road.
Yeah,
That would create some challenges.
it
with the
definitely
sidewalk on that
is.
side.
My cellar
Sorry.
gets very wet.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It seems
Thank
like
you.
considering possibly a split sidewalk on the east side for part of it and on the west side for another part might address some of these issues of staying away from the houses that are closer to the road or not. I mean, that's something we would have to rely on you to show us the actual engineering of that, but I think that's a possibility.
Can I just one quick
Oh,
thing?
please, Mr. Curtis, go right ahead.
Alan Curtis, I've heard something which kind of popped up and hit me in the head here is traffic calming sidewalk. Is that any better than the traffic calming items that we had put in front of the store? And the sidewalk on the other side of that?
I don't know that.
I'll tell you, if that, you believe it, it doesn't work. There traffic going through this town goes way over the speed limit all the time.
Mhm.
So I don't want you to use traffic calming as a justification for a sidewalk.
Right,
It doesn't make sense.
yes. As the engineers mentioned that, they know more than I do. Excellent. Is there any more? Dave, you want to go up there, and Per, you want to get in line?
Dave Linton, couple things. The gentleman mentioned trees. I'm assuming when you say no impact to trees, you're saying the trees that you figured would not have to come down for the sidewalk. Is that what you mean by impact?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you're absolutely right. A tree has as many roots as it has a canopy on the top. So if you're digging 4 or 5 feet from trees, you're absolutely right. Within 3 to 5 years, you'll see a lot of those, especially changing the drainage, you're gonna have tree issues. What's that?
I think that's maybe what I said.
Yes, I'm just confirming that. Secondly, if you're thinking about a parking option on there in an 8-foot lane, might want to keep in mind the legal width in Maine is 8'6". So I'm not sure how that would work out when you get 2 trucks meeting there. Might be a little sketchy. And the last thing is what year, I feel like this is deja vu a little bit. What year did we do that sidewalk before? The one on 17?
I think that was 2011, David.
11.
Yeah.
So 12 years, I stood here and asked the same question, and the first answer I got was, we're not going to talk about maintenance costs, we're just going to get it going. And then when I pressed on it, the next answer I got, it was going to take an hour to snow blow the sidewalk, and we know that's not true. There's no reason to not track those costs, especially when we're getting another sidewalk here. I think it's only fair to the public. We should be tracking equipment, maintenance, hours with your labor, fuel, everything. Everything can go into that. And there's very simple ways to do that. Most equipment has an hour meter right on it. You can break it down by percentage with all your maintenance costs. I run a business. If you don't track costs, you don't make investments. So, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, say your name and welcome.
Gordon, and I've been doing work on traffic calming for 30 some years. So I know in Europe, where I come from, we use 8 to 9 foot lanes. And in England, they even go down to 7 foot lanes where trucks are not allowed. And certainly we can calm traffic to 10 miles per hour or less when one has narrow enough lanes. And that's not really an option here, but and in the United States, speeds have gotten out of hand. We need more enforcement as well, I think. But my question is, we have talked about option one, that there's an additional cost for maintenance with the grass strip. But wouldn't we save quite a lot of money in the winter time? When we plow a road, we plow it off the road. And wouldn't 5 feet be kind of enough? To remove snow from the sidewalk is minimal work until the road is plowed. So wouldn't we save quite a bit by having a 5 foot? Or do we need 6 foot? How wide strip do we need in your estimation?
Yeah, Pear's comment is legitimate. I mean, if we do have the grass strip, that's placed to store the snow, either from the roadway or from the sidewalk. So that space that could be used in the wintertime for storage.
Oh,
Thank you. Excellent. Carol, go ahead.
So Bill and Flo Drake could not be here tonight, but I've got a very large document that Bill sent and met with some of us, so they are heard. They live on Church Road. He had some concerns about safety, not only just rural traffic, but deliveries, gatherings. And he said with the ditch, there have been times when there's along the road parking and people have gotten out of the cars and actually fallen in that ditch, and it's a deep ditch, especially at night. So it's really not optimum to have roadside parking there with that ditch. And he goes on to say the sidewalks and the streetlights should be on the same side. I know I frequently walk from this building up to our home, and the scattering of streetlights are on the opposite side, but I can't see the sidewalk unless a car's coming with me with their headlights on. So it is kind of tough, not knowing if there's a branch or patch of ice or something there. So it seems like it would be a good idea that streetlights would go together with the sidewalk. He had a lot of questions about the drainage, which has been talked about tonight. He makes this comment, this excavation also undermined a tree root system, resulting in a tree toppling into the newly created ditch and undermined a leach field. So not only a tree, but potential property damage and leach field and, that kind of damage that can be done. And then he's talking about when parking is in the street, then vehicles, it almost becomes a one-way traffic roadway, and a narrowing to single lane. And there are several businesses on the Union Meeting side, part of the road.
the west side, right?
Option one, yeah.
You call it option one, option two, and east and west. I'm just gonna say Union Meeting side and the other side, because that just, it's easy to me. And as far as, well, let me just go on to see. He's saying option two, con is there's no parking on either side. He would like to see the parking. He'd like to see some kind of crossing lights. And then a lot of it, I don't want to go into anything if it's redundant. Okay. Me and some others did walk the property after we met with Bill for a couple of hours possibly. And that's how I do things. When we were talking about the fairgrounds last year, I walked the actual grounds with another potential candidate and we looked at it and visualized it. What we came up with after just walking it and looking at it, when you have the crosswalk at the crown of that hill, that it does not seem safe at all. If you cross it, or Virginia said, after Dave Morrow's, between Morrow's and Poulin's maybe, you have the sidewalk along the businesses on Church Road. Then it crosses where you have a very good visibility coming from Main Street and a pretty decent visibility after you come down off that hill. So hopefully, if you're coming up a crown of a hill and you're not sure if somebody's crossing or not, if there's actually an individual or a slow moving person, you don't really know till you get up there. So I don't think that's an optimum place to cross if we're going to cross. So if you go walk it, and I invite everybody here to actually go walk Church Road and look at it, please. Also, I think Dave Morrow mentioned that there's a huge cost in moving utility poles. So is there a need with putting a sidewalk on the west side without an esplanade and possibly parking? Is there a need to move those utility poles? Because he said that's a ginormous, like $200,000 cost.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That's a very valid concern. I will say that as part of this project, any utilities that would need to move need to pay their own relocation. So if CMP, or I believe it's CMP, would have to move a utility pole, they would be responsible for moving that utility pole. It would not be a cost that the project would bear.
And the town would not have to pay for that.
And the town would not have to
So
pay.
the
for it.
town did not have to pay for that.
Correct.
For cable or any of
No.
those companies?
Any of those utilities that are on that pole would be responsible for paying for their own relocation
That's good to know.
as
Okay.
part of this project.
And you
Yeah.
had stated that the current plans, as noted, do not require any utility pole movements.
So option one, as shown, does have a few utility poles that are impacted, but with a hybrid option of esplanade or no esplanade, we could avoid them. So utility relocations can be avoided. We just didn't get into that level of detail with this design.
Gotcha. Great.
And just to clarify one comment, because I heard parking mentioned. If there's parking on the west side and a sidewalk, we can't guarantee that we're avoiding utility poles. Because we need that esplanade to slide the sidewalk around poles. And if we do on-street parking, which would be 8 feet wide shoulder,
You wouldn't be able to do that.
we
Makes total
lose our esplanade and we lose our availability to shift the sidewalk. We lose space, we lose right-of-way space.
But the town doesn't pay for the movement of those poles. That's what he had thought was the case.
That's correct, but they
Okay.
need to find a new place inside the town right away. So if the poles, the utility poles are inside the town right away, and as part of this state-funded project, they need to move, they move on their own cost, but they need to find a new home inside the right of way. So if you ask them to move outside the right of way, then somebody will have to acquire that right of way for them to go into. And there's a cost associated with acquiring land for the pole to go on. So, and it's not just the pole itself, it's the overhead wires. They need an aerial easement or permanent right to be there. So it can get messy. I heard parking and I get a little squirrely when I hear parking because it's a lot of right of way width. It takes up a lot of space in our template. But if it's just no parking, 11-foot lane, 2-foot shoulder, curbing, and a sidewalk with or without an esplanade, pretty confident we can avoid most, if not all, those poles.
Okay, where does the speed change on Church Road? So it's after after the crest? Yeah,
Just out, that's where the 25 is, in theory. It's more.
It's on Church Road.
so
Yeah.
couldn't that be moved premature of the fairgrounds? Like, couldn't we say 25 before the fairgrounds so that they're already kind of slowing before they make the crest?
The problem is people get ahead of speed coming down. the
True,
hill, And
yeah.
they're so enthusiastic to get intersection that they just can't. And they just gas on that.
Eric,
Is
do
that
we
how you
set
would
the,
describe the drivers? Enthusiastic
Very
drivers?
enthusiastic.
do we set the speed limits on that road, or is DOT have the voice for that? We're trying to address the speed limit question.
So just very quickly, the main DOT sets those speed limits. And we actually did last year or the year before, have them do a repeat speed study on Church Road. They said, well, we can either leave the speed limits the same or we can raise them. DOT sets speed limits based on the speed that the 80th percentile of vehicles travel. So I made a decision and said, well, let's leave it alone. Thank you. Because they do set those placements. We can negotiate to some extent, and I'm sure that we will if we start looking more actively at this project. But also if we consider any traffic calming measures, that can have an effect on where they would start or stop a speed zone. But there's no question that there is a problem with speeding on Church Road. Absolute problem.
Now, would there be an impact if this fairground has more pedestrian traffic and more in and out, people moving in and out of that roadway? Would that impact where DOT would allow us to reduce it maybe?
It may, yeah. They do look at a lot of factors. I can't speak to their specific formula, and some of it's art, some of it's science. But for the most part, they use that 80th percentile. And we've asked them on many roads in town to look at it and to reduce it. And they've just said, you know, people are driving because they feel comfortable driving that speed. Whether they are safe doing that or not, I don't think they are.
One of the things we do here in town that many other towns don't is the traffic lining. So lining the lanes with the center lane and the, what do they call them? The fog lines.
Fog lines, too.
And so as you narrow that width, that helps people because to slow down. So if you have a large space, like you put the white line all the way out at the edge of the pavement, that makes a wider lane visually for someone. And so they will go faster. As you bring that white line in closer, then people will slow down just inherently because it doesn't feel as wide. So you don't go as fast. In general, not every person. And Eric and the road committee have done that on a lot of our local roads, have moved the white line in. I don't know how far, but somewhat so that.
To limited effect, unfortunately. But
Right.
yeah, we have tried to use paint marking as a means to help slow things down a little.
So my last point is, hearing from the residents, we've been asking since last fall. And it's like the last step in this project. And just by a very small number of us walking that street may have come up with an alternate plan just by being creative and talking and being on site. So before we spend a whole lot of money on site plans, can I respectfully request to be hearing from the citizens way much earlier before a project? I know it was like, oh, we got to get the engineers first. Just input of people that live there and just putting heads together, walking the area. It just seems like, okay, maybe there's another plan out there that we'd have to like clear the slate and start over. And that would get rid of the ditch. It would provide parking, which I think is essential to the meeting house, other businesses. It would help things along Main Street that are already squeezed with parking. And then cross it before the big hump. There's just a lot of things involved. So if I can just say any more big major projects, input from the public would be, just in my humble opinion, very much welcome.
Well, we did start in 2017. So that was 6 years ago. So we have been listening to comments for that time. period.
Catherine, I've been asking since last fall, almost every other meeting, and so has a resident for the last October. And I've been saying it has to wait, it has to wait, it has to wait. So if you started something in 2017, it was not publicized as we're listening to the public. So I'm sorry.
Dave, did you have something to say? You can step right up if you want.
Tidbit of information.
Yeah.
I'm going to back up a little bit when we
Sure.
talked about the power lines. Just so people know, they have the right to prove, the actual spec is 8 feet either side, 15 feet above and 10 feet below the power line. So if they move that pole back, say 4 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet, whatever, then their trim to affect your trees will be 8 feet either side, 15 feet above and 10 feet below the actual power line. So just little information to.
Super.
To help.
Thank you, Dave.
Can I just,
Steve? Yeah.
I have a question about, because I also met with Bill Drake, and I saw that you included the letter he wrote to you in our packet, right?
And
Is
on the
that
website,
also-
correct, yes.
Well, is that something that the engineers will have access to?
They had access to it months ago when it first showed up.
Okay, because I think that, I would just say that he has some pretty solid ideas, I think. And the thing that I really want to explore, and I know you haven't got into this yet at this stage of the project, but the hydraulics of that whole area, I think could actually be improved significantly from what it looks like to me by having an enclosed ditch on that side that was better graded than it is now. So I know you're gonna look at that down the line, but certainly I want to make sure you had access to this, that's all. Cool.
And I thought I looked for his letter in the packet.
It's there.
It's there.
Was it way at the end?
No,
I mean, I was expecting it to be right. Okay,
I'll show you.
never mind.
Excellent. So Sean, you managed to get back to your spot. Yeah, come on in here. Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, yeah, I was just kind of giving them some space. I just wanted to say, I really think that we need to look more at the traffic, whatever fancy word we want to use about speeds, because I definitely have caused that blinky thing to go off a lot every day when I drive Church Road recently. So culprit, I know that, and so it's not going to get any better when that road is smoother. So I definitely hear people's fear about that. And then secondly, remember, one of the conversation points we've had about the fairgrounds too is in Heritage Days and other events in town is just if there was a sidewalk, how many different places there are for parking that could be accessed for events. So the superintendent's office, the town office, the fairgrounds, for things like the Union Meeting House and different things. That was it.
Could I ask one more question?
Sure,
I'm
go
very
for
sorry.
it. Absolutely.
Would we be able to have like summertime parking on Church Road and then not, I mean, I don't know if that's even feasible, and not in winter when there's, I mean, I don't know.
We already do that on some town roads, right?
Well, yeah, it is possible. We could, when Union Meeting House has events, they let me know as road commissioner, and we designate a side of the road, usually the one that is closer to them, but it depends. We can do that, and we could do something like that with the sidewalk, where we have open versus closed parking. And it does require then explaining to people why you're closing it, and that can be a challenge. But there's a lot of different options here, and I appreciate hearing what people have had to say so far. I think it's interesting. I like the idea of having on-street parking. I worry too, like you said, about having it being too wide, because that does open it up. Part of the reason, as Alan said, Route 17 gets the speeds that it does is because it is a freeway. And even though the lanes are only 12 feet wide or whatever they are, it's got a 6 or 8 foot shoulder on it, which I love when I'm riding my bike, but then, it makes people go faster. So having open parking, I mean, we could look at something where we have 8 or 10 spots, and then we have a bump out, and then we break it up. And there's a few different things. And even the idea of crossing the road, I think could add to that complexity of the roadway, which would slow people down if they're paying attention. Trouble is when they're not. But in any event, I think that these are all great ideas, and I'm glad we
Excellent.
had the chance to hear about it.
If there's nothing else from the select board, I want to just throw it out to the public one more time. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you very much for a tremendous discussion, robust. We heard from a lot of folks online. This is what I would say sort of coming to the end. If you have a comment, now's the time to make it. Otherwise, I would just suggest that we take a brief break, if everyone is done, before we move on to our next public hearing.
So 5 minutes.
Oh, hang on. Oh, he's
getting
socializing.
it. He's ready.
Yes, so I just want to make sure. So I would say, please take a 5-minute break right now, and we'll come back and do our next public hearing. Thank you very much to the engineers. Thanks to everyone here. This is your warning gavel.
We did not extend.
I mean, but it's not, it's not the first year.
Yeah. Okay. That
Yeah,
sounds
here we
good.
go. 1 hour.
All right, friends,
1 hour.
welcome back.
There's 30 minutes of agenda left.
We are getting ready to move on with our agenda.
Appreciate the very.
And Carol's leaving. That's okay.
Very well balanced.
All right.
Give me just a quick second.
Okay. Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate it. If you are all done, we will come back. I know Carol, we lost Carol, but she will float in here. There we go. Excellent. Good. And our recess is officially over. We move back to our agenda.
I need to make a motion
Yep.
to extend the meeting, and we should have done this at 7:30. So my
Oh, yeah,
motion
since
is
you're
going to be to extend the meeting effective at 7:30 for a period of 1 hour.
So
Back in time. Nice
Well, we
job.
want to make it official,
Yeah,
so
oh, yeah.
got to do it right.
you want to second that?
I'll second that retroactive going back in time motion.
Good. So it's been moved and seconded to extend the meeting till 8:30, retroactive to 7:30. Is there any more discussion? All opposed, all in favor, sorry. There we go. We just changed time. We are now scheduled for a 15-minute public hearing. In your packets, you can find information about our upcoming public hearing, and it is on page 20 of your packet if you are following along. This is the public hearing for the new liquor license application for the Reedfield Emporium. We have 15 minutes. If any member of the public would like to speak regarding this application, now is your time to do so. Go ahead, right to the podium. Thank you.
You two have been a tight race every time.
I know, I like it. It's good. Very
You can
good.
just line up and talk
Yeah.
when one's done.
Ralphino, 52 Mountain View Lane, again. Past history, I am a recently retired member of the Select Board, and we have done these license renewals periodically as they expire and need to be renewed. My questions are, and I'm not sure that it's the purview of the Select Board, but I would like to be on the record as asking the question anyway. It's my understanding that this license has not been renewed for many years. And it's my understanding too, that they run hand in hand with a restaurant operation license. So my question is, the Emporium has been closed for a number of years. How do you approve a liquor license for an establishment that no longer, to my knowledge, has the operating and health certificates necessary to run a restaurant? I don't believe you can, as a layperson, I don't believe you can actually serve liquor without some other type of attending function. So I think maybe the cart is before the horse a little bit in this particular situation. And I'm wondering whether or not the application is timely and whether or not other permits and COs and the rest, given the length of time that it has not been functioning as a restaurant with a liquor permit, has a lot of time has lapsed. So I'm just curious how this could precede a reopening and the proper permitting to reopen the restaurant function. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric would have that. Eric?
Sure. So these license approvals basically happen in parallel, not in sequence. And so any conditional approval, really, it's all conditional until all the permits are in place. And that is identified later on in the application, and also in state statute, that these licenses do happen in separate lanes. The state has their lane, the town of Reedfield has their own lane. and each has a limited and special focus that they review. So to answer your question fairly directly, it doesn't necessarily matter. It isn't the town's purview to question the restaurant licensure.
Go ahead, sir. Yes, Mr. Winter. Thank you.
Eric Winter from 823 Main Street. I have to begin with complete ignorance of both past and present legal issues and regulations. I only want to say that I miss the Emporium. We loved going there. It was pleasant. It was wonderful to have that in town. And I would love to see it come back.
Thank you. If there is anyone on Zoom that would like to speak to the renewal for the application of the liquor license at the Emporium, you can do so now. If you have a question, you could do that in the chat as well.
Just a correction, it's not a renewal, it's a new application.
Oh, sorry. New application. I apologize. New application. There's nobody online. Virginia, if you want to go ahead.
I just want to point out, and just, not everybody sees your meetings and all that, and nobody, not a lot of people attend, but this select board has been very pro new business or maintaining old business and welcoming all the pot stores. I think another restaurant would be a nice added business to our location.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone else online? This would be your last call. Last call, so to speak, appropriate. All right. Well, hearing none online, and if everyone here in person has had their moment, I'd like to go ahead and close the public meeting. All right, very well. Now we move. Oh, do I need to gavel that? Extra gavellage. Now we move to new business. We have 10 minutes set aside for this. And it's 23-115, which is to consider a new liquor license application for the Reedfield Emporium. We have 5 minutes set aside for that. And you can find it, like I said, in your packet on page 20. All right. Is there any further information that we need? Mr. Bitar, if you'd like to go ahead, come up here. I just want to remind you as a courtesy, so we can put this on record. You are here in violation of your bail proceedings, but we know that. And it's a courtesy that we are.
That's not
we're here.
true. It's not
That
a
is true.
violation of anything.
Thank you. It is true. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I'm
How
not
dare
sure
you.
why
I have
that
to-
would have.
I have
even
to
been
say
done.
that.
How
I have
dare
to
you?
say that because it is a part of the record and it is true.
That is
And so I
not
just want to
true.
point out, if anyone's
It's an
watching
attempt.
this,
Hey,
if
Bob,
anyone's
Bob,
watching this, then they know. I just wanted to point that out. You are free to answer questions and say whatever you need to say.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Just
you.
go on with what
Yeah.
we need to do
Exactly right.
about this topic, please.
So I have some discussion.
Sure.
Are we going to hear from Bob first?
Oh,
No?
I didn't know we were.
Yeah, if you want to say something, Bob, go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Ask your question. You have a
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you say ask yours?
Ask your question.
Okay, sure. So one thing under 2B that is something that we need to address, I believe, is the non-compliance of licensed premises or its use with local zoning ordinance or other land use ordinance not directly related to liquor control.
I can't hear you.
You couldn't hear me?
I can't.
Just move
What
forward.
page are you on, Catherine?
2B. It's
It's page
7 of
26.
The application.
That's what we need.
Yep, so under 2B, it says that if there is non-compliance of the licensed premises or its use with any local zoning ordinance or other land use ordinance not directly related to liquor control, and it's a question, I'm not saying there is non-compliance, but I'm
Mhm.
asking about parking, because it was stated back in these things were included online in the packet. 1981, there was reference to how many spaces were needed and that they would be constructed of certain materials. And then I think that's the only one that was included was from that date. And there was a plan included And it doesn't look like that parking exists at this point in time, if it ever truly did exist. And so I think that's a condition that needs to be met for this to come forward. And we have recently, well, about a year ago, when the new business Moonglow went in, I think there were 12 spaces approved for that business at that time, and I think those are very visible out back. And so that counts to that business, and then there needs to be at least 15 spaces according to the old plans that would be available for the restaurant, and it doesn't appear that they're there. And I'd like to go on the record of saying that I agree it would be great to have the Emporium back. We have no control over that. I think that's what Eric alluded to, because we don't license a business like that in town. We do license those marijuana businesses because that's a separate state law. But the restaurant will be licensed by the state, meeting health and safety concerns, right? And we will license this. We don't have a choice on licensing this unless one of the conditions is not met. So it's not whether we want it or don't want it. If the conditions are met, then we approve it. And if the conditions aren't met, we disapprove it. So I guess I'd just like to hear what you can address for the parking issues.
I sent to Chip a diagram.
Was it in here?
And
Ask that louder, Steve.
Is it in the application?
no,
Okay,
no.
I'm not
it
seeing
isn't.
it.
I submitted a
Okay.
diagram of the parking. I have a copy here. I thought he was submitting it to and including it in the packet.
Can we see that?
Yeah.
When was that received? When was that received to the town?
This morning.
Oh, this morning. Okay. Not with the application.
No.
Okay.
And I think there are the adequate number of parking spaces, and it includes the additional property that that's at all of that block of property. And the parking is, I think, adequate for the spaces that are required.
So there's gravel and marked at the ends and so on, 15 spaces of parking that are designated just for the Emporium.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
When
Now,
I drove
that's
by
all of
today,
the
it was all
parking-
grass and a mud entrance.
The mud, that was last year when someone came to rework, just eliminate the flooding in the basement area, and they just took some of the gravel and pushed it, I guess, away. I don't know, but we can have gravel put there again. That's not a problem.
I think it would need to be there prior to the license, according to the laws, the way it's written in the application. And that would be great.
You mean there'll be no license until there's gravel there? Why not a conditional thing? That if
because
the
it was-
gravel isn't there,
Well, it was
then
granted.
the license will be revoked.
Right. So, well, no, because in 1981, it was issued conditionally and it hasn't been there yet. So
No, it's been there all along. You see, you're wrong. That gravel was installed originally, and it's 40 years. It's been there. No one has not used gravel. There's no one ever been stuck in the driveway. So what you're saying to me is until there's gravel, you will not approve more gravel, you will not approve it. If you're going to have a conditional approval. I can have gravel put in there, you know that.
well, it looks, I think other people have seen it. It's all grass. It's about a foot high.
It's
And
years, it's been 40 years, and underneath that grass is
Okay.
gravel.
Okay, so I think a condition of this, it's what other people were saying, the restaurant will be brought up to condition, and then you'll get your restaurant license. And if the liquor license states that we have to have this parking available, as any business in town has to have X number of spaces available based on what their business is.
Yes,
I think that's very reasonable.
that is reasonable, and why not make it conditional over the next 2 weeks? and I'll get someone to put gravel in there. You want gravel, there'll be gravel.
Well, I think if it meets the conditions that had been laid out originally for my feelings, I mean, there's 4 other people here. I'm just speaking.
Yes,
It doesn't even have to be denied or not approved or approved. It can just be continued to the next meeting.
next
Doesn't mean
meeting.
that it has to
Okay,
be
I guess
denied.
we're done.
No, I'm just me. You need
Oh,
to
I
hear from
see.
everyone.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sean, did you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna ask because I'm confused about the parking and not because, well, we just got the drawing, but Bob, but for your tenants and how does I guess the parking now that there's the moon glow there, what does that change to where the parking is? So I guess I don't know how that works. So can
He
Chip look?
he
at the-
parks his car in the back,
Yeah,
and there are occasional people who stop in, and they're very occasional, who stop in to buy their products from him.
yeah, I just meant in general, though, when we approved moon glow, it was for a certain amount of parking.
12.
So I don't know, I'm just asking, has Chip looked at the moon glow parking and the Emporium parking? Are we co-locating the parking? I just want to be.
Well, I
understand
imagine
that.
we are, but, you know.
And how does the hours of operation affect that?
Yes,
So has Chip looked at that?
Chip has not looked at that, and it may not even necessarily be his discretion, given the ordinances, it may be the planning board. But that issue has not been looked at, other than when the question was raised, to look at the original design for the businesses that were approved at that time. And then, I guess, a correlation with what exists now, which does not seem to match the original 15 approved spaces.
Any other questions, Steve?
Well, I'm seeing 5, 7 spaces, 12 spaces, right? And then, Bob, on your drawing, if you just clarify, for me, there's a number of spaces here labeled staff parking,
yes,
right? Is that for the staff of your restaurant and the,
yeah, I guess anybody who's working.
because I'm just not clear. The law is there has to be 15 spaces.
Well, that's what
David,
was,
is that-
that was in Mr. Batar's first plan that he submitted. That was included in the packet, his original drawing from 1981, and the conditional certificate was for the 15 spaces. So I think I was just saying that I think we ought to have at least the 15 spaces there at the time we approve the permit. And as long as they're there, then we're good to go.
Okay. Bob, I'm just not seeing where there's 15 here. Just the way it's drawing, I feel it's weird passing this back and forth. You know, but. These spaces, so it's these. Oh, okay, the staff is only on this side. Yes, right. So that's, and where's the moon part? Is it part of? That's part of the same thing. That's part of it, yeah.
Right, but it has to be separate because we allocated 12 to Moonglow when their establishment was given
Well, I
their.
guess the Emporium will never open. I guess that's what you're saying.
Well, I think you, as you said, there were 15 spaces there that have gravel on them.
I thought that was sufficient. I'm uncertain what you people are doing. I really am. Insulted the minute I walk in here for fake fictional charges, which will be.
I don't really.
Hey, we're not
You
getting that.
made
Carol?
a statement, excuse me. You made a statement.
Well, let's stick to the
Bob,
Emporium, you know,
Bob.
because I think I
Go
think
ahead.
we have a lot of people that want to see the Emporium open, and I just want to make sure people are understanding.
40
make sure it
years.
Works. I
Yes.
don't think anybody's talking about anything else
Thank you.
right now. I
Yeah.
just really want to talk about the Emporium.
Yeah, Carol has a few questions. Go ahead, Carol.
So, as Bob said, Moonglow has occasional things. I think the required number of spots for that is probably excessive. Happy Camper needed only 10, I believe. And that's got much more room to work with. So the Emporium was open. We live catty corner from it, okay? It's been open forever. It's been closed 4 years, maybe. There's
It
never been a
continues.
problem.
I'm sorry. It's been open. We have events there
Yes.
and regular parties and so on go on there.
Right.
That's for people to make, and people have come and they have events there and
Yes, we have
Yeah.
seen events going on.
But they're
Open to the
private.
Public, like at regular hours, I guess is what I'm saying. There has not been an issue before this interim closure about parking. So to bring up something from 1981 is just like blowing me away. Can I ask what it says here? And it says a motion by Alan Tubman, seconded by Romaine Turn. It was moved and seconded that it is sufficiently safe, provided that it met all, and something's blacked out, which is unfortunate, because I would love to know what that says. But most of this stuff from 1981 has to do with water drainage and what are we doing with sewers and so on and so forth. It's not, so the Emporium has been great since I've been in this town, and it's been a very long time since I have. We haven't had a problem. They've, on big occasions, they park down towards us. At the library, they park all the way down to the town hall if they have to. And now there's a sidewalk for safe passage. So I don't get why we're penalizing a potential business that has been in existence, that was very popular, about parking. And even more absurdly, the town keeps wanting to eliminate more and more and more parking downtown. So are we encouraging businesses? Are we making it impossible for them to open their doors with, I mean, there is parking on the street on Main Street, and that extends the parking at his Emporium. So all of this, it has to be right there, or we're not gonna allow him to open. Are we gonna do that if something opens at the corner? Are we gonna do that for at the art exhibit? Are we gonna do that at the library? That unless you can provide enough part, the library, for gosh sakes, has huge events. And we don't say, I'm sorry, you can't hold an event because you don't have 12 spaces on your property, They're up and down the street.
The
They're probably
library
even all the
parks
way
at
to
the
town hall.
Emporium.
What's that?
The library parks at the Emporium.
And the Union Meeting House parks at the library, and everybody parks at the post office. So, I mean, I just don't understand. It's very hypocritical to say we're pro-business, but we're closing parking spots, and we love to have people open, but we're making it impossible for you to open.
Carol, can I
so-
stop you for a second, please?
Go for it.
Okay,
Go right ahead.
I just don't like the word penalizing. What Sean said right before that is, can we figure out a way to do this? And I'd like to do that. I would like to figure out a way to do this, because I think Sean is correct. I think it's hard to imagine that Moonglow ever has 12 cars in those 12 spots. And if you look at the 5 spots, what I'd like to suggest, if you look at the 5 spots that are closest to Moonglow, dedicate those 5 to them. I'm sure that's going to be enough. There's 7 spots and 9, that's 16. That would do the job. I'd like to suggest something like that.
How come you're not counting the 3 spots in front of Moonglow for Moonglow? If they have 1 or 2 people.
I'm sorry, they're just not marked on this map.
Well,
Okay, but
and you
they're
can't,
So you,
there,
of
and
course, you can
that's-
do that. So-
That's what
you can't do that by state law. Street,
They're there
but
and they
that's,
can be utilized.
okay, but we're talking about land use. And in land use, it states clearly in the land use ordinance that the town has approved, not the select board, but the voters of the town. That there are certain guidelines for lots of different land use, and parking is one of them. And I'm not sure why we came up with 12. Well, we didn't, but why 12 was the number for Moonglow. But I think if you're going to say that you want to change that, then you have to make sure that that meets the planning board ruling. So we can go back and ask them to just tell us, was 12 something that was required, or was it requested? Can it be changed? And I think these things are based on square footage, and I don't know why there would be a difference at Happy Camper versus Moonglow, and that should be asked. But according to state law, spaces that are on the side of the road are there to be used by the general public, and they can't be counted as parking for any particular business. So nobody gets to count those as their required parking.
So are we consistent that a cannabis establishment has to have X number? Are we saying Moonglow, you have to have 12, but Happy Camper, you have to have 10? And Bob, you have to have 12 or 17 or whatever it is. And when the place across the street's the Big Brown Plate thing, if it opens a business, is going to have the same, they will not have enough on site. There's not that much parking behind that business. So if we're ever going to sell that piece of property and make it commercial, which anybody that's shown interest is showing interest in commercial, I don't think there's that number of parking spots on that property. So,
But it's a planning board issue. It's not a select board issue to determine the land use. And so the planning board needs to state that. And it has been a problem over time. I know our former CEOs have had to deal with there not being the adequate parking at the Emporium, and that's documented in the file. And it says here, it's on page 33, that the applicant has put on notice that he has a potential parking problem. Based on the information received, it's the opinion of the planning board that there is inadequate parking available for the number of planned uses. So all I'm asking is, can we get
I'm sorry,
verification?
Where is this information?
This is on page 33 in the packet. It's the statement of facts from 1981.
but 81.
1981, I hadn't
Seems like-
opened.
That's when you applied for your permit. And so that's, if you're applying for a new permit, we need to know how many spaces you need. And as long as you have the number of spaces you need, then it's fine. But we have to make sure that there are those number there, like we did to Happy Camper. We made sure that they had the required spaces. We did the same thing for Moonglow. It's only reasonable to do the same thing here.
So are you saying it's the planning board that determines the number of required spaces?
I think so, based on the land use. I know that for a restaurant, it's based on the State Bureau of whoever licenses restaurants. If it's so many seats, they have a formula for how many spaces you need to operate a restaurant.
Well, I guess I can't open the Emporium. It seems to me that there's no way that it's possible, especially with such a group of people who are intent on making it impossible.
I have a question.
I am not intent on making it
I don't
impossible.
think that's fair.
I am intent on making it possible. So
And so am I.
I-
Just asking to verify.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to know that it's correct, as we would for any business.
Yes. I understand.
So can I ask another question? I'm first year in the select board, first time getting to do this. It's a lot of fun. So the restaurant, you said the restaurant application, it's a state lane, liquor license is our lane. Will the state require a certain number of parking spaces for the restaurant?
No, that really is a local discussion, and I'll just try to curtail some of this back and forth because it is difficult. That really, it is a planning board question about how many parking spaces. That doesn't mean that it's not possible. I think it would be a wonderful thing to have that restaurant open again. However, there is the consideration of parking, and when the restaurant opened, it may not have had the same number of apartments. It certainly did not have an accessory business or a separate business. That needs to be considered, in my view. I think that it would be appropriate to ask the planning board to just look at the parking, look at the application, and see if there's a way to do this, or what parking could be required, or if we can count any on-street parking. I think you're right, Catherine, about that generally, but there can be some flexibility. I don't know if that exists under our land use ordinance, but I don't believe that it's a discussion that the select board can or should necessarily come to a conclusion on tonight.
But is it the kind of thing where we can ask the planning board to take a look at Moonglow and look at their kind of business flow so far and say, oh yeah, it looks like they don't need
I
12
think
parking
absolutely,
spaces, right?
absolutely, and that's where it
Okay.
should start, I think.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question that has nothing to do with parking, so I want to mention this. First of all, there's two questions. Number one, the Emporium can absolutely open with or without this permit. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so again, this conversation is not about whether or not the Emporium, do everybody understand that? I just want to make sure that's clear. This is a liquor license that we're talking about. The second thing I want to point out is,
Let me answer that.
Sure,
Every restaurant will tell you every restaurant will tell you that they cannot function financially without having wine and beer. It
Okay.
is not possible. And,
Sure.
and there will be employees, I'm sure. We had several employees always. I'm 82. I'm not going to be able to do all the cooking. And so there will be people there and they must be paid a normal and good wage. And that's the way that it's done.
Sure, but I just want to clarify that so there's no confusion. The other thing I have a curious about, and this does have to go back to the Moonglow issue, is there is a connecting door between the Emporium dining rooms and the Moonglow establishment.
Yes.
I want to know about that doorway, if it's going to be kept, if it's being eliminated, because according to the Office of Cannabis Policy, having an open door between the two it puts Aaron's licensure in jeopardy. So I just want to find out how that's being addressed.
It's locked and permanently locked. I don't think it's never open, except when he goes to the bathroom, which is in the other side. But that's.
So you're saying that Aaron will go through that locked door to the other side to use the restroom?
From time to time, I guess, but the store is locked, it would be closed at that time.
The store would be locked at what time?
Would be closed whenever he leaves that building.
So
the
till
store is-
7 p.m.
Is locked.
It'll be open till 7 p.m. and then it
What
closes.
Bob is saying is that if Aaron leaves to go next door to the bathroom, he shuts the store down
Yeah.
for that 5 minutes, say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he reopens it
Yeah, right.
with the locked passage as well as the outer doors. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Can that door be eliminated if need be?
sure.
I just wanted to make sure because I know that was part of the discussion we had earlier as well. Any other questions about this?
I have a question. So Bob, if all of your seats are full at the restaurant, what would your capacity be? About,
I don't know, about 50.
really?
Yeah.
So how do we go about this? Can we ask the planning board? How
I
often do
think
they
we
meet?
have 60 days in which to approve this or not. So I think we could ask the planning board to look at this within a set period of time and get back to Mr. Bitar. And if he has the required number of spaces, it would come back to us and it would get approved because that's it. That's how it happens.
Thank you very much.
So there's no magic about, it's not necessarily 15, it could be whatever the planning board.
Determines is based
Determines
on land use in the town, right?
Okay.
And if you're gonna have 50 spaces and if Moonglows goes down, then those spaces become open to be counted. And that's all very reasonable.
Excellent.
So what would our motion?
Do we need a
be,
motion to do
Eric,
that?
to, can we set it aside? Can we table it to our next meeting?
Sure. Yeah, well, you've completed the public hearing, so that piece is set. So you would, a couple options, you can approve, deny, or table. You did note the 60-day timeframe, and I don't know what time commitment the planning board may have on this. You certainly have a couple more meetings before you get to that point. I believe you have one at the end of May.
The 22nd.
So you may want, depending on where things are at that meeting, you may want to make a decision one way or the other. Just because something is denied doesn't mean it can't be brought back. But I think that it's probably a good thing to put some time limits on this, and you could make a suggestion or recommendation that the planning board review this and provide feedback as to their expected time frame and maybe a heads up on what they think might be a possible solution, if there is one, for your meeting on the 22nd. I think that would be a reasonable request to ask them to work on this and bring
That's
it back
great.
to you.
Are we also meeting on the 5th of June?
We are.
I think it might be wise to, well, I don't know. I don't want to delay Mr. Bitar's application. If we can do it by the 22nd, I think that would be better.
Sure. If we can.
But it may take until June 5th. Just in terms of not sure when the planning board is meeting next. But does someone
Do you know that, Eric?
do they actually have to meet to decide or to determine the number of spaces? If it's just in the land use ordinance, can they just inform us?
They would need to meet to discuss it because again, it's multiple businesses that didn't exist in the same compound, using the same parking in this formula. Moongle opened when Emporium was closed. So there is a change here. And I'd say if anything, if there is a cart before the horse here, that perhaps this application should have followed a clarification of parking, but.
So I just want to jump in. We need to make an extension to this meeting. So I'd like
So
to,
how much do we have left?
I think we have 15 minutes of material left on the agenda.
There is a planning board meeting tomorrow. I will ask them to perhaps at least give this cursory review. It's difficult. The notice has already been posted for the agenda. Otherwise than that, they have a meeting on the 23rd would be the next regular meeting. So it depends on how flexible we can be with that schedule. I'm not necessarily comfortable asking them to consider something on
For tomorrow.
for tomorrow. But I think that maybe the June 5th date would be the best option for the moment.
Yeah.
So I'd like to extend this meeting by 15 minutes. Make a motion.
It's been moved and seconded to extend the meeting. All in favor? Thank you very
I
much.
just want to state also on Mr. Bitar's application, he's hoping to expect start date is June 29th. So this gives us time based on the start date you implied, right?
I'm sorry?
Your application for your expected start date was June 29th?
June 29th.
June 29th.
Yes.
So if we are talking about next meeting and
Yes,
talking,
yes,
we're
that's
we're still
reasonable, reasonable.
working within your time limits.
So I would like to make a motion to ask the planning board to review the parking for the business establishments at the, what is the address there, Bob?
1146 Main Street.
At 1146 Main Street and determine the required parking spaces for each establishment located there. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Which may, and this isn't necessarily my motion, but that may include revising Moonglow to a lower number.
Mhm.
It should.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And to do that, this is in my motion now, and to have that information back in time for our meeting on June 5th. So we'll just postpone, this isn't in the motion, this would just postpone the application until then. And so if you've heard back from, I'm assuming they will get in touch with you. And so if those
Yeah.
parking spaces exist, then
All
we'll
right.
be approving.
So your motion is to table this until June 5th after we hear from the planning board.
Yes.
And there'll be gravel there.
Yep.
Great.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to table this issue until our June 5th meeting when we can have planning board review. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Bitar. We are going to go back now and catch up to one of our items, and that is to do some old business. And that is the approval of the item 23077, approval and signing of official town meeting warrant and review of the mailer going out. In your packet, I don't know if this is in our packet yet. or
It
not.
is in a separate document.
Oh, yes, the separate document.
Because it's like 400 pages.
Yeah.
68 pages.
Yeah,
Because it includes the entire comprehensive plan.
Correct.
yeah.
The entire warrant and the mailer all in one.
Yes,
And
Dave.
You insisted.
I
like,
was gonna extend the meeting for Dave.
Yes, that's
for
right.
another 5 hours.
36 hours.
Yeah, we'll give it to you to read here.
Yeah.
Just cut the lights off when you're down.
You have to read part of it.
Yes,
I
you
feel
can
like, yeah,
find
okay.
the information on the website. It's under the select board meeting, which is going on tonight. And it has the final town meeting warrant and secret ballot. Just to explain one more time, crystal clear for everybody here. This is the warrant language. This is not the time to change that. This is hearing it and knowing what we are going to be voting on. So once we get to this point, it's pretty much set, regardless of when votes happen, et cetera, et cetera. We heard that earlier tonight. I just want to clarify that so we have the truth out. This is just the hearing for the ballot. This is what we're going to do. We are going to approve that tonight. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. Okay, good. Are there any questions about the warrant item? Not too much difference than what we had seen before. Pretty much all the same. You can see the items in their final form as you scroll through. There are a total, if you're a numbers person, there is a total of 43 articles on the warrant for people to consider. Eric?
Or Catherine, if you want to.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say that there is one change that was made. Article 38, the numbers did not tally in the version that you approved last meeting. The numbers now tally correctly. It was the total number at the bottom that was in error.
Okay.
So my request is that you do two things. You motion to approve Article 38 as drafted, just to clarify that, because it is different, and to move it forward with a yes recommendation if that is in fact your desire. And then to move to approve the entire warrant as drafted. That was corrected before these were sent off to the printer. They're in process, so that's been corrected already. I just wanted to make you aware of that. In order for us to get this back in time to get the absentee ballots out 30 days in advance, they have to be in by Friday. So we've just had a somersault festival of moving
Dates
things,
and timelines,
dates and
yeah.
times, and we're there. So I very much appreciate that approval.
You got it.
What number was that?
Yeah, what is?
Number 38
Article
is.
38.
It's appropriating the designated fund balances to the 2023 tax commitment in a total of $217,303.
And before it was something like 300. There was just an error there from when we had moved
The
money
typo.
from the designated funds to the fire truck, because we had those. We wanted to move those closer so people could understand that, yes, we are intending to use designated funds. It was $200,000 that was moved, but it was inadvertently left. So and when we corrected the lines, the total was not updated. However, the individual line items were.
So now all the Ts are crossed and the lowercase Js are dotted.
Everything, there shouldn't be a period out of place on this thing.
Alright.
So, but that was the correction, Carol.
Another one, Carol?
Can I just ask, so the one question where you pulled up the fire truck, did that end up being A and B? Or did
No.
we renumber stuff?
Yes. We renumbered them.
Yeah, it was renumbered. So we do have, and we had discussed that at the meeting, I believe,
So the fire truck
is 15, 16
borrowing
and
is
17.
15, that's this financial statement for the town. And then 16 is appropriating the 200,000 from the reserve. And then 17 is, do we agree to purchase it?
So right now, if I went to the website, the final product is there as it's going to be.
It is, and it is this that is in your packet, and we've triple checked it, and I feel comfortable. It always takes a few iterations to get everything down, but there is no question left. This is
Good.
what it is.
So you need us.
I would
to make
entertain a motion to approve warrant article number 38.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve warrant article 38 with the updated, correct, non-typographical errored numbers. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much. And now,
Make a motion that we sign the town, do we need to make a motion to do that?
Yeah,
We need to make a
to
motion that we
complete
sign
warrants,
the
yes.
town meeting warrant for June 13th, 2023.
it's been moved and seconded to approve the final warrant. Double seconded. It's been moved and seconded to approve the warrant as it is written. And is there any further discussion?
Just one thing, Dennis.
Please,
I'm gonna
sir.
pass you 2 pieces of paper, or it's actually like 10, but 2 signature pages marked out. These are 2 different versions, original of the warrant. One is the original for posting for the town meeting that's proper. The other is the posting that happens in association with the public hearing that's scheduled for May 31st. So we have 2 originals. So please do sign both of those. And then under other business, we do have the select board needs to sign the school warrant for posting. So I will just, if you don't mind, pass that along as well. So you have 3 pages to sign. And I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Do we need a motion to sign the school warrant?
No, that's basically a requirement, I believe.
Right, and there's a motion on the floor. We need to vote. All in favor of signing the warrant, raise your hand. Good, and thank you very much. Our last item for tonight is item 23-116, which is consider a revised local 93 local 2011 collective bargaining agreement. This is basically the renegotiated union contract for town employees that are members of the union. We discussed this last week in our executive session, but just so everyone knows, the town gets together with the union representative and someone from a worker from the town. We had some really nice negotiations, nothing that we felt like was out of hand or out of control. In fact, a lot of the negotiation process was putting into the contract things that we already do in practice. So it was a really nice opportunity to align practice with the contractual documents. So if anyone has any questions about that, you can ask them. Excellent. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to accept the union contract.
Do we have to authorize someone to sign it? Or? is-
Dennis and myself as negotiators.
We have to do that, though, as part of the.
Yes.
You certainly could authorize the contract and we would execute, but yeah, it'd be helpful to have that specifically listed.
Okay, so I move that we authorize the acceptance of that contract and authorize Dennis and Eric to sign that.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the union contract and have myself, Dennis Price, and Eric Dyer sign on behalf of the town. Is there any further discussion? Excellent. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Carol and I stopped mid-rate.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, let's stop and then go. I think that brings to an end officially our meeting.
Already?
Can you believe it? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you very much. Adjourn.